streaming. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, July 15, 2020. We are currently at the Great Lakes Middle School. Myself and Superintendent Glickman are on site, while the rest of the board is remoting in for this presentation. We had the majority of our members not attend tonight's meeting so that we had more room inside of the presentation room for public comments and public input. That is why we are limiting our own staff inside the building. First order of business is a call to order.
Weedman?
Here.
Mack?
Here.
Braden?
Here.
LaCroix?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Nash?
Here.
Drack?
Here.
Okay, we have established a quorum. We will allegiance for tonight. The next is I need an approval to I need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Miller?
Aye.
Drack?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Okay. Next is public comments. We are probably explain better than I can for public comments for tonight.
Actually, I would like to hand it over. Is Mr. Wolf with us?
He is.
Can you talk about the process that we're using? In
Sure.
terms of how people are submitting, and then I can talk about what we're going to do with those comments.
Sure. If you are live streaming from home to the Board of Education meeting, if you take a look underneath your video, you will see a link. In the comments section, it says, please use this form to submit public comments, and it has a hyperlink there. So if people that want to comment from home can go in and click that link and fill out that Google form, we will read those as they come in during the public comment portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know, do you want to be reading public comment after our presentation anyway?
Chris, would it be better for you to kind of try to think if we kind of categorize the public comments, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of people having the same concerns.
Could be.
If we can, Chris, as we go along, if you can kind of group them into categories, either, you know, say it's a reopening plan, face shields, or whatever the case may be, and then we can kind of generalize them at the end. And then obviously we will, with the Google form, we'll get back to anybody who does make a public comment. Does that work?
Yeah.
Sure.
We're also hearing that people are having difficulty hearing us. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I think we just have to both project a lot more. All right, so just another piece I want to mention about public comment, which is simply that, okay, can you hear me now? Or still not? Okay, we are, Mark, having a volume problem, and it's not the mask. If need be, I can go to another location and we can use the method we used previously with echoing. Okay. All right. In that case, I'm going to go find another location. We're going to just pause for a quick moment so that we can continue, and I'll speak directly through my computer. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So we're pausing.
Would it be better than for me to go off of the mic and just go through the computer? Can you guys hear me okay, or I can still hear, I can hear you, okay. Gotta find balance. Sorry, everybody.
Jim, you're very echoey.
You want me to try turning my mic on the computer and this off? No? How are we doing? Nope, that didn't work. Let me try something, okay? Is this better for everybody? Because we can.
Jim, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me now? That much better? Okay. That's what I figured was gonna happen. So we're foregoing the district mics, and I'm going right through the computer. Lynn, let us know when you're back in. Again, everybody, I apologize for the technical difficulties.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Much better. Okay, so here I am in the GMS library. Maximum flexibility, which frankly is the name of the game that we'll be talking about tonight, is how we have to consistently turn on a dime. I also, before we get started with our presentation, which I think is what we are headed to, is that right, Mr. Weidman?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I need to address a few things. So first of all, we will be looking at and reading through public comment after the presentation. We expect that there will be many questions that people will be asking. We will not be answering all those questions this evening. Tomorrow, our community members will receive an email that has a link to tonight's presentation. It will also have a link to a written version of this presentation. It'll also have an updated FAQ. The questions that you ask over the next week or so, we will be updating that FAQ again with answers to your questions. Also, if there are questions that are more specific that don't really belong in the FAQ, we will answer them individually via email. So I wanted to let you know that. The next piece is I just wanted to point out my mask and Mr. Weidman's mask. So the two of us are here at GMS, and you will hear us talk tonight about the requirements for when people are on site. Anybody who is in a school will be required to wear a mask at all times. And so for that reason, we have our masks on this evening. All the folks that you're seeing on the screen that don't have masks on are home or somewhere else, not on site. Finally, the presentation that you are about to see was put together by a large group of people, and we'll be talking about that. We made the rather risky decision that we were going to have a bunch of the people who helped to make the decisions that we're going to be presenting this evening. A bunch of us are going to be presenting together. I say risky because that means that we have people from their homes on all kinds of Wi-Fi systems. We all know what happens with Wi-Fi. If at any point one of our presenters is having a problem with their Wi-Fi, I will jump in and present for them. Last piece I want to mention, you're going to hear us talk about this a lot. The plans that you'll hear about this evening are tentative plans. They can change for many, many reasons, including changes that could happen in our county, in our state, along with a wide variety of other reasons. I just wanted to point that out to you again, that that's tentative. And with that, I think we are ready to begin. I'm Dr. Lynn Glickman, Superintendent of Community Consolidated School District 46. In May of 2020, the CCSD 46 reopening team began envisioning how to reopen schools as safely as possible for the fall of 2020. Over 100 staff members and administrators met at least weekly through midsummer. 3 teams were formed: operations, instruction, social, emotional, and physical health. During these meetings, staff members considered many points of data, including the results of 2 family surveys and 2 staff surveys. They also researched, read articles, and reviewed continuously changing guidelines from state agencies and federal organizations. 11 members of our reopening team will be helping to present information to you through these slides. I am enormously grateful to them and to all of the over 100 staff members and administrators who volunteered to devote their time and expertise to this important project. Although there are many unknowns regarding the future in relation to COVID-19, CCSD 46 remains excited about guiding each of our students through a successful school year. We are committed to providing our students with learning environments that are as physically and emotionally safe as possible, whether students are learning at school or are engaged in an online platform. Illinois entered Restore Illinois Phase 4 on June 26th. This phase allows schools to reopen with the following mandatory safety protocols: no more than 50 people in one space, face coverings required for all students, staff, and visitors, increased sanitation, temperature and symptom checks, or self-certification for students, staff, and visitors. It is assumed that school will begin under Phase 4 guidelines unless the COVID-19 virus resurges and the state returns to Restore Illinois Phase 1, 2, or 3. Our reopening team has based our decisions on this guidance, of course, which was further clarified through a document that was released jointly from the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health on June 23rd. This guidance was changed in some areas and further clarified on June 25th, June 30th, and July 9th. As well, we have reviewed guidance from other organizations, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our team also considered the thoughts and concerns of our families and staff members. We created and reviewed surveys to gather feedback on the remote learning program that was used in the spring, as well as hopes and worries about fall learning options. Here, we will focus upon 2 data sets gathered from families, but please note that more graphs were available for your review in our written report. 942 families from across the district responded to the survey that was sent out in late June. As you can see, of those families, only 63% were confident that they would send their children to school for on-site learning with social distancing. And when we asked families if they would voluntarily choose remote learning for their children, 34% said yes, and 36% responded with a maybe. The reopening team carefully considered state guidance and our surveys when determining our best course of action. The Illinois State Board of Education strongly encourages on-site learning as much as possible. Family surveys indicate that some families prefer on-site learning, while others prefer remote learning during the pandemic. Therefore, 2 options will be offered in CCSD 46: 5-day per week on-site learning and 5-day per week remote learning. Various factors could certainly change our plans for schooling. For example, a rise in coronavirus cases could cause a return to remote learning for all students at the start of the year and/or later in the school year. Or if so many families select on-site learning for their children that maintaining social distancing in school is not possible, then a hybrid approach may be used instead of 5-day on-site learning. In this case, students may be learning in school on some days and learning from home on other days. It is important to note that while a response of 942 families is a very high level of feedback, it still only captures information from about a third of our families. Therefore, we recognize that plans for the fall could need to change if the 1/3 of the families who responded do not strongly represent the interests of the whole district. Or, of course, receiving new guidance or even new directives could change our plans. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Coy Flores, 5th grade LA Lit teacher at Frederick and president of the Teachers Union, who will begin talking about the on-site learning option.
The reopening team is planning for full days of on-site learning. However, this planning could change based on student enrollment. Dr. Glickman has already mentioned the possibility of changing to a hybrid approach if so many families select on-site learning for their children that schools cannot provide a socially distanced environment at all. Also, if the balance of student enrollment in on-site and remote learning requires a redistribution of teaching and supervision responsibilities for specials and Encore teachers, there is a possibility that the day could be shortened. Families are asked to commit to on-site or remote learning for at least a trimester. However, there is some flexibility for families to move from on-site to remote learning before the end of the trimester if necessary, more so than the other way around, especially if the requests are due to health and safety concerns. Also, per IDPH guidelines, individuals who have had contact within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19 or is suspected of having the COVID-19 virus must isolate at home and monitor for symptoms for 14 days. Students and staff who are required to isolate due to close contact will transition to remote learning during the isolation period. Face coverings are mandatory for everyone inside a school or bus. They may be removed when eating or outside if social distancing is practiced. As per the ISD and IDPH updated FAQ, face shields are not effective protection against coronavirus, and therefore masks are the rule and shields are the rare exception. Students may be allowed to wear shields in lieu of masks only if they present a medical note that documents a medical contraindication to wearing a mask, and then strict adherence to social distancing is necessary. Face shields may also be worn by staff in appropriate positions where viewing mouth formations is necessary, such as for speech-language pathologists, as long as social distancing of 6 feet is maintained. CCSD 46 has ordered 2 cloth face masks for all students and staff from the state government. Individuals will be expected to provide their own cloth masks as well, as a clean mask must be worn daily. Any individuals who arrive on buses or in schools without face masks will be provided with temporary masks. Also, plexiglass protective partitions will be installed in school offices, as well as in some other areas of schools, such as in some restrooms. Our architects are in the process of advising the school district in this area. Now I'm pleased to introduce Leslie Armstrong McLeod, our webmaster and president of the Support Staff Union.
A self-certification process will be used for symptom screening of all students, staff, and visitors. All staff must self-certify daily that they are COVID-19 symptom and fever-free, and parents must certify daily that their child is symptom and fever-free prior to boarding a bus or entering a school building. It is noted that student temperatures will not be taken on buses, and therefore parents are expected to certify daily that the child is COVID-19 symptom and temperature-free. As well, there will be an electronic certification form that parents will be required to complete daily for a student's attendance at school. CCSD 46 is currently exploring various self-certification options and will share more information as soon as possible. As it cannot be assumed that school visitors will have taken their temperatures at home, all visitors will have temperatures taken and asked symptom screener questions. Please note that visitors will be limited to those who are absolutely necessary to the functioning of the school. Also, students or staff who arrive at school without self-certifying will have temperatures taken and will be asked symptom screener questions. Of course, increased hygiene practices are crucial during on-site learning. Adequate hand soap and hand sanitizer will be available throughout the schools. Staff will teach and reinforce hand washing with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Scheduled hand washing will take place throughout the school day, including before and after eating meals. Also, sharing of any personal items or school supplies will not be permitted. Individuals with any symptoms of COVID-19 must remain home. You are all likely familiar with the list of symptoms. Students who present with COVID-19 symptoms will be supervised in an isolated space until they can be picked up from school. Quarantine spaces will be separate from health offices. Staff who present with COVID-19 symptoms will leave the building immediately. As mandated by ISB, IDPH, staff or students who have tested positive for COVID-19 or who are suspected of having COVID-19 virus should seek medical attention, self-isolate, and follow CDC guidelines for discontinuation of isolation. Individuals who have had close contact within 6 feet or more for more than 15 minutes with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19 or is suspected of having COVID-19 should isolate at home and monitor for symptoms for 14 days. As mentioned earlier, students and staff who are required to isolate due to close contact will transition to remote learning during the isolation period. ISB and IDPH do not require full school closure due to a positive COVID-19 test, although full school closure could be indicated based on the number of individuals who are positive for the virus. Also, it is possible that a full class or even grade level could revert to remote learning due to exposure. CCSD will work with the Lake County Health Department to contact trace to the greatest extent possible and will notify affected families in a timely manner per the parameters set by the Lake County Health Department. Updates from the Health Department are monitored regularly. Now I'm pleased to introduce Adam Halperin, our Director of Operations and Maintenance.
Daily cleaning procedures are an extremely high priority. High touch points will be sanitized 2 to 3 times a day using an EPA-approved disinfectant. Examples include door handles, railings, and door push points. Bathrooms will be sanitized 2 to 3 times daily. Rooms will be sprayed nightly with electrostatic discharge sprayers using chemicals that kill bacteria. All rugs and carpeted areas will be vacuumed at least nightly. Soft surfaces such as carpeted areas, rugs, and curtains will also be sanitized regularly. Water bottle fillers are already in place in some schools. Some existing drinking fountains will be replaced with water bottle fillers as it is practical at this time. Others may be closed down and/or signage will be added to emphasize keeping mouths a distance away from the bubblers. Drinking fountains and water bottle fillers will be sanitized multiple times daily. Students should bring water bottles to school every day. Cloth toys or other cloth material items that cannot be disinfected should not be used. Current cleaning staff include both CCSD 46 custodians during the school day and a contracted night custodial team. If new cleaning protocols create a need, the contract company will be able to provide more staff either in the evening or during the day. Now I'm pleased to introduce Eric Gross, the assistant principal of Grays Lake Middle School.
When planning for on-site learning, we note that only 50 individuals are allowed in one space, and social distancing should be maintained as much as possible. Outside, groups of 50 must be 30 feet apart from each other. Buses are also limited to 50 individuals. Students will have assigned seats and family groups will be seated together. It is acknowledged that maintaining 6 feet distances on the buses is not possible. Masks must be worn at all times. Classroom desks will be spaced between 3 to 6 feet apart. Spacing will be impacted by how many students are enrolled in on-site learning. Classroom desks will all face the same direction. Tables and other extra furniture will be removed from classrooms to maximize space. We have worked with our architecture firm to create socially distanced floor plans in classrooms. As possible, students will remain in their classrooms. Teachers will travel from class to class to provide specialized instruction such as specials and encores and allow for subject matter instruction at the upper grades. Some student movement will still be necessary for some small group instruction. To facilitate appropriate upper grade math groupings, 7th and 8th grade students will likely be grouped by math classes. Students who received advanced math instruction in 5th and 6th grades will likely go to separate classrooms during math. Staff will develop school-specific hallway and bathroom guidelines to limit the number of individuals in those spaces at one time. To the extent possible, schools will designate hallways for one-way travel. It is noted that this is not possible in some CCSD 46 schools. Upper grade locker usage will be carefully structured using time staggering so that social distancing can be maintained as much as possible. Based on the physical structure of each school, arrival and dismissal procedures will vary to limit students congregating in outside or inside spaces and to limit the number of people entering individual doors and hallways. Walkers and students arriving by cars will be expected to arrive at specific times. Students will not be allowed to be present on school grounds early. It is likely that all students will go directly to their classroom upon arrival. There may be a slight staggering of students' arrival and dismissal times. Therefore, there may need to be flexibility regarding instruction and independent work start and end times. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Amy Forrest, Grays Lake Middle School 8th grade math teacher and treasurer of the Teachers Union.
Enhancing safety during mealtime will require significant changes to our procedures. Of course, students will wash hands before and after eating. Most students will eat their meals in the classrooms. However, other spaces in a school may be used, including the multi-purpose room, cafeteria, and possibly outside to maximize social distancing. Students will be allowed to remove their masks while eating. To the extent possible, students will be seated 6 feet apart during lunch. However, maintaining a 6-foot distance between individuals is not guaranteed. Meals purchased or provided by CCSD 46 will be individually packaged and delivered to classrooms for consumption. Allergen-free areas will be available for students. Locations will vary by school. Families will be offered a health plan meeting to discuss the allergy plan with leaders and/or have a Section 504 plan meeting when appropriate. Areas where students consume meals outside their classrooms will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected between groups and after meals. Cleaning supplies and protocols will be in place for students to disinfect their own desks after eating. Of course, food service personnel will use appropriate PPE, including gloves and face coverings, while preparing and distributing food, and will wash hands frequently. Physical education may take place in a variety of locations depending on available space for social distancing in each school, including outside as possible. Students will not change into PE uniforms. Face masks must be worn during indoor PE. While outdoors, masks may be removed if students are able to remain 6 feet apart from each other. Except for PE, elementary specials and middle school Encore classes will occur in homeroom spaces. Please note that art and music safety and instruction protocols are still being developed. Also, library book checkout is still being explored based upon the latest safety guidance available. At this time, possibilities regarding band and choir programming at the upper grades have not been determined. ISB IDPA guidance discourages indoor music rehearsals in classes due to evidence of substantial spreading of the coronavirus during musical events, and recommends that music and band classes be organized into smaller classes. Instruments cannot be shared, and face masks must be worn during singing. More information will be provided as soon as possible. As mentioned earlier, CCSD 46 plans to offer specials Encore classes to students, but acknowledges that there is a possibility that such classes could be limited or eliminated during the pandemic if the balance of student enrollment in on-site and remote learning requires a redistribution of teaching and supervision responsibilities. Now I'm pleased to introduce Jennifer Miller, Woodview first grade teacher and vice president of the Teachers Union.
In on-site learning, each student who is currently eligible to receive special education services through an IEP or has a Section 504 plan will be assigned to a case manager for on-site learning. Students might require an IEP meeting to adjust the learning plan elements necessary to meet the needs of the students in their learning model via remote on-site learning plan. The assigned case manager will make contact with parents or guardians to schedule these meetings. Students will receive any combination of on-site, video therapy, teletherapy, or activity-based services. ISB strongly encourages teletherapy or video therapy wherever possible to reduce interactions with more peers and adults. Students will also be required to wear face masks unless documentation is provided by a physician that it poses a health risk to the student. Adapted face coverings, assistive technology, and other supports will be provided, determined necessary by the IEP team in order to ensure the proper ability to communicate and receive services. Evaluations for students that were unable to be completed due to the need for in-person testing will be completed as quickly as possible once school resumes. A school psychologist will initiate this process as appropriate for each individual circumstance. Any new or upcoming evaluations will be conducted either in person or remotely based on the educational team's recommendations for gathering appropriate data to inform eligibility determination decisions. We'll close this section regarding on-site learning with a few more considerations. Outside spaces will be used as much as possible. Although it is acknowledged that our Midwestern weather does not allow for year-round outdoor activities, weather permitting, students will go outside for recess. Students may use this time for a mask break, as long as they stay 6 feet apart from others. Playground equipment and other shared recess equipment will not be used. Assemblies and field trips will not be permitted during the pandemic. And finally, the potential of adding extracurricular activities and providing space for outside groups will be evaluated after the successful start of the school year. Now I'm pleased to introduce Chris Vipon, Director of Technology, who will begin our section on remote learning.
Remote learning for the 2021 school year will be significantly different from the remote learning used at the end of the 1920 school year, based on feedback received from families and staff, and the revised guidelines and expectations provided by the state. There will be at least 5 hours of daily learning activities, including regular direct instruction through Google Meetings and recorded meetings. Students will follow a daily schedule and will be expected to attend all meeting sessions. Attendance will be taken. Families can expect whole group, small group, and individual teacher-student interactions, and assessment will return to more of a traditional grading style, unlike the pass or incomplete system that was used in the spring. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Barbara Zaris, principal of Avon Center School.
A detailed list of remote learning responsibilities is presented in the written report. Here is a very abbreviated list. The school district must develop a professional development plan for remote learning and identify curriculum that can be facilitated remotely. Individual schools should develop plans to check on students' well-being. Teachers should provide academically rigorous, differentiated remote learning activities that promote student growth and should communicate regularly with students and families. Students should attend all Google classes and meetings and complete assigned work by due dates. We will, of course, want them to be engaged and ready to collaborate. Parents will be expected to provide a space for students to complete remote learning work, set a schedule to help students establish and follow regular daily routines, and review and monitor assignments with students frequently. Also, families are expected to commit to remote learning for at least a trimester, as staffing decisions will be based upon student enrollments. Schedules will vary by grade levels, but here are potential samples for 1st through 4th and 5th through 8th. Now I'm pleased to introduce Lynn Miscelonis, 4th grade teacher at Meadowview School and the Secretary of the Teachers Union.
During remote learning, each student who is currently eligible to receive special education services
through an individualized education plan or has a Section 504 plan will be assigned to a case manager. Students might require an IEP meeting to adjust their learning plan elements necessary to meet the needs of the students in their learning model. The assigned case manager will make contact with parents or guardians to schedule these meetings. Students will receive any combination of video therapy, teletherapy, or activity-based services. Student evaluations that were unable to be completed due to the need for in-person testing will be completed as quickly as possible once school resumes. A determination of location, either remotely or individually on site, can be made with the educational team and parent or guardian. Any new or upcoming evaluations will be conducted either in person or remotely based on the educational team's recommendations and the parent or guardian input for gathering appropriate data to inform eligibility determination decisions. Please understand that families are expected to commit to remote learning for at least one trimester, as staffing decisions will be based upon student enrollment. Also, depending on enrollment factors, it is possible that in some cases, students from more than one school could be grouped together for remote learning. The district will work to avoid this as possible. The reopening planning team awaits upon guidance from ISB regarding remote learning. In the meantime, ongoing planning topics include the creation of more sample schedules and determinations regarding platforms for state and local assessments. Also, remote learning will focus on core subjects, and the extent to which elementary specials and middle school Encore classes will be included may be determined by the balance of on-site and remote learning enrollment. Now I'm pleased to introduce Heather Lorenzo, Director of Pupil Services.
Our early childhood team has been hard at work in creating a revised program during the pandemic. We've identified the following high priorities: ensuring we have time on site with students with a developmentally appropriate program and making effective use of time to enhance learning both in and out of school. Knowing that mask wearing and social distancing is particularly difficult for our youngest learners, we have created a hybrid model. Each student will be on site one morning per week. Class sizes will be very small, and each student will be provided with home-based themed learning for the rest of their week. Lesson plans will include various domains for building skills, and students will be provided with activity bins containing supplies. Related services will be provided as appropriate. Health and safety protocols will mimic those in other grades, including mask wearing. Please note that families that do not want their students on site at all will receive the weekly activity plan and activity bin for the home-based activities. Many more details about the early childhood program are available in our written plan. And now I'm reintroducing our superintendent, Lynn Glickman, who will share updates about kindergarten along with closing information.
After much consideration, our reopening team recommends a return to half-day kindergarten for 2020 and 2021. The team sees a variety of benefits for students in on-site learning. Kindergartners will only have to wear masks for half the day, and kindergarten class sizes can be smaller, making social distancing much more manageable and student-teacher interaction even better. Also, the difficulty of maintaining social distancing while eating lunch on site will be avoided for kindergartners. Kindergartners in remote learning will also benefit from the change, because we acknowledge that it is difficult for such young students and their parents to manage a full day of remote learning. The kindergarten team, principals, and Department of Teaching and Learning will be working together to revise curriculum and instruction to match the half-day time limits. Please note that school start and end times will be communicated to kindergarten families as soon as possible, and schools will survey kindergarten families regarding requests for AM or PM sessions. Also, midday school bus routes will be added to accommodate this scheduling change. Finally, I want to express that CCSD 46 continues to see a great benefit to a full-day kindergarten model and is making this change only in response to the unprecedented current health situation. We will end with our important next steps. Brief school-specific surveys will be sent to families tomorrow, July 16th. The purpose of those surveys is for families to commit to either on-site or remote learning for each student. We need this information for all students so that programming and staffing decisions can be made. We ask that you please respond to surveys by 4 p.m. on July 21st. Our reopening team will continue to hone plans and monitor any revised health and safety recommendations, and we'll change our plans accordingly if necessary. Questions should continue to be sent to our school principals, department heads, or to me, your superintendent. The FAQ will continue to be updated, and I will continue to send you information through emails. As we all know, the situation is extremely fluid. Health and safety recommendations continue to evolve, and it is certainly possible that such changes, if not directives, may cause revisions to our plans. If and when that happens, we are committed to keeping families and staff informed throughout the journey. And Mr. Weidman and Board of Education and Community, that closes our tentative reopening plan presentation.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any specific questions regarding what we have just seen? Okay, the only thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the staff that did like a monstrous job of putting all this together in the last, 6 to 8 weeks. The groups that you put together, it does not go unnoticed, and it was greatly appreciated by the board. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of unknowns. So thank you for all your work, and please pass that on to your individual groups that you work with, not just to those that are in attendance today.
Can we clarify something? This is a tentative plan, and do we need to clarify that a decision to open has not officially been made? I know that based on the conversation that we had, Dr. Glickman, that you know my position on it, and that is that as well. First of all, to echo what Jim said, greatly appreciate all the work that went into this plan. We need to have a plan to reopen. And I think this is a very thorough and well thought out plan. And I think you did tremendous work on putting it together. That being said, I do not think that we should have in-person learning at least at the beginning of the school year, based on where we are now. And that's not to say that we wouldn't have it during the whole school year, but certainly to start with, given where case counts are headed at the moment, both in Illinois and around the country, and inadequate financial resources and other support from both the state and federal government, I think the position that we're in, and really that every district is in, is that the decision to open is ours. It's not something we're going to be forced to do one way or the other. And I think we have to do what's appropriate for our students and our families, and for the safety of our staff and our administration. I just don't think that we should open yet. I'm happy to have the discussion, but that's my position.
So I'm going to piggyback on that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to piggyback on that. Stephen, you mentioned the financial implications. And before I even jump into that, yes, thank you so much for all of your work. I know many of you have volunteered your time and have worked long hours prior to that too. So once again, thank you so much for all of this very comprehensive work. Stephen, I do want to I want to have more discussion about this too. I think it's a really important decision. Specifically, I have 3 concerns or comments to make. The first is financial implications. Do we have a financial plan? Do we have any estimate on what it's going to cost us? And if we're diverting those funds away from other important initiatives that we've committed to as a district, it would be good to have a plan for, or to understand what the plan is to put plexiglass up and finance masks and all of that, especially in light of an unstable revenue stream right now. So I have that question. And then if we do open, or when we open, I'm wondering if we can, this is board work, I'm wondering if we can prioritize locally made goods and services, and if we want to consider a policy that would allow taxpayers' money to be reinvested in the local economy intentionally. And then my last question, the second to last question, is how flexible is our calendar? Dr. Glickman, you and I talked about that a little bit. I understand teachers are going to have to make a massive switch no matter what we move to. And I'm wondering if there's any flexibility to give them a little more time for planning, and also to align with the season so that the outdoor classrooms that Meadowview's been recognized for, and Woodview has an amazing one as well, if those would be more available to teachers at their discretion. So financial implications, the calendar, and then the third one is, and I know this is not an easy question to answer, but how do you want the community to monitor progress? What does that look like on a really broad scale? Because I think it's just helpful. And Heather, I know you've done a lot of work with well-being, and progress is one of those things that makes us feel like we're moving through this. So I don't ask it as a gotcha. I just ask it as it'd be good to have some momentum and to have a shared understanding of that. So those are my questions, and I would love to hear more discussion about that. Thank you.
So shall we try to answer those questions the best that we can? Okay, Mary, you and I have had lots of conversation about the costs, and I know you are working on our budget. I ask for you to give a little bit of a brief answer to that question.
Yes, the tentative budget will be presented to the board at the August meeting. We are currently still in process building that budget, and as we develop our plans for the start of the school year for reopening and or on-site or remote learning, we are incorporating the expenditures that are necessary in order to effectuate the plan. There are still some unknowns about what the level of investment will need to be, in particular as it relates to transportation and food service, which are 2 of our larger contract services that we secure for students. I can tell you that revenue year to year, meaning current fiscal year 21 over fiscal year 20, is relatively flat, with the addition of the ESSER CARES Act money. And then just yesterday, the Illinois State Board of Education released information about the digital equity grant that is going to be opening up soon for school districts to apply. And then in addition to that, there is the FEMA money, which is a federal reimbursement of 75% of expenditures. So we are accessing grant funds or funding sources to the best of our abilities as we learn about these options and consider how these options fit into our needs and our spending plans for reopening. So it's a long way of saying we're still working on it, and I'm optimistic that when we piece together these funding sources as well as develop our plans, that the budget will come together fairly nicely. The district is in a good position should there be some deficit spending in the O&M fund or transportation fund, that our fund balance is strong, and that's why you develop a fund balance, is to cover these challenging time periods.
Thank you, Mary. And I just want to tag on one more piece, which is that this new challenge brings us a myriad of ways to spend money. And every day, superintendents are in touch with each other, business managers are in touch with each other, directors of O&M, operations and maintenance, are in touch with each other with new ideas that are safety protocols. And so one of our challenges is to prioritize those and see which of those things are really required for us to be able to open and which of them are nice to have. And so that's something that we continue to work on as well. As for your calendar question, Christy, I was planning to share during the superintendent report that at the next Board of Education meeting, we'll be bringing you a revised calendar. And I'll speak more specifically about it a little bit later, but specifically related to the pandemic, one of the pieces that our calendar committee has recommended is moving an institute day that we had planned for October to the front of the year, thereby giving our staff 3 days at the front of the year to prepare for this very unusual year rather than 2. This will move the school year back, or the start of the school year back, by 1 day. So students would start on the 20th of August, kindergarten starting on the 21st. And would not affect the end of the year because we are simply flipping the date of an institute day. That's a very small change. You and I spoke one-on-one. I will share about larger possibilities, things like ending, having our calendar kind of as scheduled through about winter break, and then having, a long hiatus of school over the winter months, and then starting back up much later, maybe in the springtime, then continuing on into the summer. I will tell you that that conversation has not occurred amongst our opening up team yet, our reopening team. And certainly as the year progresses, there are possibilities that we could look at our calendar, but there are, as I'm sure you know, many complications related to that as well. But that doesn't mean we can't have the conversation. We certainly can. Yeah. And your last question, I have just lost.
It was due to progress coming my direction. Is that true? Now, I just am trying to clarify. Is that due to are you asking more about student learning progress?
It's just a large umbrella question, just so that when we're in the middle of February and it's dark and we're already all sick of COVID, right? But when we're really sick of it and we've been stuck inside, we can say, okay, we're making progress. Like despite all these challenges, this community incubates great people, great teachers, great businesses, all of it, and just give us some momentum. So how can we communicate that, and what should we be looking for, and what can other people in our community be looking for? So it's instruction certainly, but also well-being.
And I'm going to jump in, Heather, to say I'm not sure when Christy mentioned that that you've been a part of a team that's been looking at well-being, that she was necessarily assuming you would answer the question. I'm not sure, because actually I think that question is one for the board to discuss. That feels more like the board understanding how to measure progress rather than necessarily our administration. Or it's a conversation we could have together, but it feels more like it starts with the board. I don't know if that's something the board wants to engage in at this time or not.
I guess let's see if anybody else has any other questions, and we can kind of circle back to a discussion. Maybe we can hit all the topics in one big discussion.
That sounds good, Jim. I actually had a few. So first, I'd like to also just continue the echoing of kudos to the district, the administration, and the opening up team. You guys have done a remarkable job, and the plan was just super comprehensive and really easy to understand, follow through, and keep me light on questions. So thank you. One thing came to mind, well, a few things came to mind for me. The first being with regards to had the opening team considered like a volunteer or trial period, if you will, to this approach, just so we could, if you will, test and learn, right? To open this up to a subset of folks that would be voluntarily willing to participate, so we could identify any gaps, any other risk or unintended consequences that may not have been considered going into the reopening plan. So just curious as to any sampling that we may want to consider prior to going just full scale. So that was one. And part of what came to mind for me is that I know many camps had originally started with, closures, and then they went from closure to just full opening. And I'm sure most of you have seen, as I, in the news within our own state and county, and then in neighboring states where, camps have opened up and, there's been students exposed to COVID. So just curious in terms of any sampling we would consider to just kind of learn and be able to pivot from those learnings to make sure that, we're directionally going in a good place for the masses. The next one is in terms of the face covering. So there was conversation around face shields with the doctor note. And I'm just curious if ISB or IDPH specifically cited anything with children with like chronic respiratory or pulmonary issues, and how effective or protective would face shield coverings be in lieu of mask. So if there's any additional insights there, that would be helpful. And then lastly, one of the things that was in the presentation was just talking about, we need to be flexible and mindful that we could be in a position where we need to pivot to a hybrid model at some point in time if our numbers start to fluctuate. So I just wanted to know if we had a sense for the number of on-site learning that would need to happen before we kind of flip to a hybrid model, or vice versa. If there was a certain, number or targeted threshold that, in the hybrid model, if so many families select on site, what the impact would be to remote learning. So those were my 3
All right.
items. Thank you.
I'm gonna try very hard to address all 3 of those questions, and team, please feel free to jump in. And by the way, I need to acknowledge that when I left the other location and came over to the library very quickly, I did so without paper and pen and don't really want to be taking notes on my computer. So if it seems like I keep forgetting things, that would be why. So Tamika, your first question was about whether we had considered basically trying it out. And I think I'm understanding that you're asking the question if that would be something we would do over the summer. Is that correct? Okay, so I will be very frank to tell you that that was not something that we considered. I think probably because we were looking at all of this under the heading of what we have as possible. So we've already completed our summer school programs for which we had already budgeted. So, we haven't budgeted for bringing people back and opening up some kind of a District 46 camp. That's not to say that it's not a conversation we can have, but if your question was, had we considered it? The answer is no, at this time we haven't. We certainly are carefully watching, as you said, folks like what happened over at Lake Zurich, and anybody who might have students on site. But right now, we have just in the past few days put the ribbon around the plan that we've made, and so we haven't been ready to bring students back. I'll add too, there are so many more details that we're still working on. So I appreciate the fact that folks are commenting that we have done so much work, and we have. We also know we have a lot more work to do before we feel ready to bring students back. Your next question, give me a word, Tamika, was about. Can't hear you.
Sampling, perhaps, to pivot our plan.
Okay, so another one of your
Face shields. I'm sorry, I was stuck in the mute.
Thank you.
So,
Face shield.
face shield.
So IDPH and ISB are very clear that face shields are not effective against preventing people catching coronavirus, and have noted that if any time someone is wearing just a face shield, they must be 6 feet apart. What they have said is that if there are students or potentially staff members, but they were talking specifically about students who have some kind of a medical condition, and I think you might have mentioned a few of them, where the doctor, a physician, says this person cannot wear a face shield, a face mask, it would not be safe for this child for one reason or another, then the family needs to submit that doctor's note, and based on what we see, a face shield may be allowed in lieu of a face mask, but in that case, that child will need to be always at least 6 feet apart from anyone else. And I think this was touched on in the presentation, although we were having a little bit of connectivity at the point, so some people may have missed it. There could be some situations where staff would wear a face shield in lieu of a mask for a short period of time. If, for example, they were a speech language pathologist where children need to be able to see their mouth, we might have them using a mask, again, a shield, but at least 6 feet apart. Did that answer that question?
It did.
Okay. And then I think your other question, you were talking about a hybrid approach, but I was a little bit unsure. So at the moment, we are presenting an on-site and an online, a remote approach, knowing that it is possible that we could have to use a hybrid approach, which means one child in both places, sometimes at home and sometimes at school. If, for example, we have so many families that select on-site that we simply cannot put all of those children on site every day and socially distance and keep it safe. Is that what you were asking about?
That's where I was going, where like, what's
Okay.
the threshold for making that decision?
Absolutely. So that brings us back to our architecture plans, our architect plans. So we have received from our architects what classrooms look like if they are 6 feet apart. Then we have to, understand, but maybe we have to put children 4 feet apart. Maybe we have to put them 3 feet apart. I don't have a number for you, Tamika. I can simply tell you that if we cannot have all of our students where the families are requesting to be on site, if we can't put them in classrooms at least 3 feet apart, and if we cannot support having them at lunch as close to 6 feet apart as possible, then we would have to go to a hybrid approach. I don't have a number to give you at this time.
Okay, this was helpful. Thank you.
Stephen Mack?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I'd like to add my thanks to everybody. I don't even think thanks is enough because what normally should be a relaxing, fun summer spent with family and friends has turned into, for all of us, but especially all of you, into a Herculean effort to make sure that we could talk about masks and shields and classrooms and curriculum, but at the heart of it all, you want to keep our kids and our staff safe. And as a dad in the district, that ranks to the top for me. So it means a lot, and I thank you, even though I don't feel like thank you is enough to say, and maybe I'll find other words to say later. I share similar concerns to my colleague Stephen, not only being a dad in the district, but also being a teacher myself, a high school teacher, and trying to reconcile what it's going to look like for my opening, as well as the opening for my children. And so I do tend to be more of the opinion that we should really at least consume and digest all of this information tonight as we move forward in the decision. And quite frankly, who knows, the decision might be made for us, for the next few weeks. I'm concerned with the shift in the public's perceptions of the virus, where we were comfortable closing schools very early in the virus, and now that we're showing numbers on the increase, we're talking more about reopening plans. That does present a concern for me. And so I had 3 questions or just comments. And I know most of these I spoke with you, Dr. Glipman, about during our conversation. I actually have 3 questions and maybe a quick comment. Number one, I just want to make sure that we as a board can provide any support that you need. So please let us know what we can do from our end as we continue to move through this. But I want to go back to the hybrid thing real quick. Is there a sample yet of what a hybrid would look like? Just out of curiosity, there may or may not be, but I'm just curious as to, I know some districts around the area have developed a hybrid, and it's just of interest for us to, and maybe for the community to see what a hybrid might actually look like. And I guess this question may have already been touched on, so forgive me, please. But is there some argument or reasoning behind why we don't just start with the hybrid, and why we don't offer the 2 choices as being hybrid and remote rather than 5-day on-site and remote, just for purposes of maintaining at least that safety? And the third question is a theme that I tend to touch on a lot during this COVID pandemic is, what is our flexibility and our ability to be independent from districts in the surrounding area when everybody might be moving in one direction and we may decide that that's not the direction for us. And Stephen alluded to that in his comment as well. So those are my comments, questions. But again, thank you, everybody. I don't think I'll be able to ever express it enough.
Well, the good news is I now have a notebook, so I was able to take notes on that.
Good.
I feel like you mentioned 4 things, and I think embedded in the middle were 2 that I can address right away. You asked about what a sample hybrid, what hybrid might look like for us. So certainly our reopening team did talk about hybrid models. One model that many school districts are looking at throughout the state are things like a child might go on Monday and Tuesday, go to school on Monday and Tuesday. Everybody's remote on Wednesday, and then that child is remote again Thursday and Friday. And then the other child is home Monday, Tuesday, remote on Wednesday with everyone, and back in session on site on Thursday and Friday. That's one model. Another model that is used in some places or being talked about is some students being on site 1 week and other students being on site the next week, back and forth. The reason that we didn't select a hybrid model speaks to the next question that you asked, and then I'll go back to what could be our next steps regarding hybrid. The reason we didn't, there were so many conversations we were having, and we really had to focus and hone in on what was going to get us, frankly, to tonight, right? The reason that we are not at this time recommending a hybrid model is really twofold. There are really 2 major reasons. One is that the guidance we've received from ISB and IDPH is to have students on site as much as possible. If you go through that document, I think we've talked about it, not our document, but the document that was provided by ISB, oh my goodness, almost every page there's a sentence like that, have as many students on site as possible. And we looked at that, and then we looked at the survey results from our families. And based on those survey results, and again, that was just a sampling, so we don't know for sure that the 1/3 of the families that responded to our most recent survey are fully going to inform what will happen. But by looking at that, it looked to us like there was a very large group of families that would be asking for remote. We had, if you go back and look at those charts that we provided, 1/3 of the families said, if there's a remote option, I want it, okay? And then another 1/3 of the families said maybe. And I will tell you that having reviewed all of the comments that people submitted in the last survey, so many of those comments were families who said, if masks are required, I will not send my child on site. There are many people, for a wide range of very good reasons, who do not want their children wearing masks. So we believe that there will be a large group of families that will select the remote option. And if that's true, we don't really have a justification for then not offering a 5-day option for the families who are requesting that. So it's, we're trying the best we can to balance the needs of all of those families. Now, certainly what we can do is, as our reopening team goes back to the drawing board, well, that sounds like we are starting from scratch. That's not what I mean. As we pull back together and continue our work, we can certainly come up with a consensus as to which hybrid model we think we'll use if we need it, and then we can answer that question through the FAQ. Does that work for you, Mr. Mack?
That helps me. Thank you, Dr. Glickman.
That's great. And then you asked about our flexibility, and I think you were asking that question kind of in under the heading of having concerns about reopening our schools at all at this time.
Right.
And so I think that that's a conversation that we have to come back to maybe towards the end of this discussion, because I have some questions that I will want to ask the board about that topic.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman.
Certainly. By the way, team, I know I just keep answering questions. I don't want you to feel like you can't. Okay, just letting you know.
Actually, this along those lines, what does your team and the staff think about one way or the other? I mean, I know that I think you've surveyed them, but I'd be appreciative of some input from the staff about what they think. I mean, I'm concerned for their safety as well. This disease affects everyone, and maybe not. The indications are it may not be younger people as much or as severely. Jury's still out on that, but it certainly affects adults, and it's not just something that you get and automatically goes away when you're done and it runs its course. There can be lasting effects, and so I'd like to know what they think as well. I said earlier that I don't think we should open, but that being said, I'm going to of course abide by the will of the board, and particularly if the staff is saying no, we're fine with it. I mean, who am I to say no? But I would like to hear your opinions and your thoughts.
Are you talking about the staff survey?
Well, the staff survey,
or
and
those
just
of us those of us sitting here. Sorry.
well, both really. The survey and yourselves.
I think there's.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to say, I think for many, the pendulum may be still shifting back and forth as time continues. Our survey results have shown kind of just similar to what I reported actually in a previous board meeting, that we have a perfect bell curve at that time. There's no way to know how people are feeling from minute to minute as they watch television or interact or prepare. The school year starts really soon. So those feelings start to settle in, and that indifference starts to happen, or excitement starts to happen. So I can't imagine we'll really know outside of the survey that I know that we're planning on conducting again to really gain a sense of capabilities and willingness. Lynn, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to echo some of what you were saying anyway. And I think you're right. I think there are people who are absolutely concerned, rightly so, with returning with class sizes and things like that, and the health and safety of themselves and their students. But as Dr. Glickman said, this is ever changing, and so we're getting new information all the time as well.
Before we go too much farther, my hand's going up in the air. We're not to dismiss anything you were saying. We had somebody walk in and take a couple of pictures and walk back out. So I was trying to figure out what he was doing. So that wasn't to dismiss anything you were saying. So
sure. We were talking about surveys. Maybe we could speak to the various surveys we've done, if that might be helpful. So Heather has already spoken about the survey that was just kind of gauging people's comfort. But again, that was earlier, right? It was earlier. Recently, Chris Woke, our Director of Human Resources, sent out a survey that was really specific about asking people to share if they had a condition that would make it so that they would be unable to return on site safely. So we've done that survey. Now, tomorrow, at the same time that we're sending out this family survey that we talked about, we're also sending out another staff survey. That one is we're going to be asking, in fact, you know what, Chris, why don't you speak to it?
Sure. To answer can kind of elaborate on the first survey that we sent out. It was to get a general indication of where staff was with possible medical needs or childcare. And then there was a space for narrative, and we got a lot of good information from that narrative piece, and people were, like Heather said, all over the place. We have some people that are very excited to come back and ready to be in person. We also have some people who, for one reason or another, are not going to be able to come back to on-site instruction. The survey that's going out tomorrow, very similar to the parent survey that's going to be going out, is going to be asking staff to indicate whether they're prepared, if they're planning on coming back for on-site instruction, or if they would need to be off-site for any number of reasons. And then we will review those to look at our staffing numbers and then prioritize how we can make accommodations. Of course, number one priority for our staff, just like our students, is for those who have medical conditions, either for themselves or their people in their family. So we're going to take a look at those numbers, just like we look at the student numbers that come in, so that we can staff accordingly.
I don't know if any of this is answering your question fully, Stephen, though, because I think what you want to know, and I appreciate that you want to know this, is does our staff want to reopen school? I'm not sure we've clearly asked that question because we understood that our charge was to create a plan based on the guidance we had received from the State Board of Education, and that's what we did. So I don't know I don't know where we go from there in terms of your question.
Well, and I don't, I'm not sure we do know where to go. I mean, there are so many unknowns about this that it's hard to settle on any one particular thing. But, if we're asking the staff to come back into the buildings, then I want to be sure that they are comfortable with doing that. And if they are not, then they should not be asked to come back. I mean, we're meeting virtually right now. We're not even in the building. It just makes me uncomfortable to ask other people to do that, something that I'm not willing to do right now.
Well, just on that aspect, just remember we're keeping down our numbers here so that more people could come for public comment. We could all be here together doing this meeting. So just remember, I mean, that was the big reason why we kept it small today. I expect in August, unless something changes, that we would all be in the same building again. We have social distance room here and nobody actually showed up. But if we had packed the room with concerned citizens, which I know they're out there because they're probably all online watching. But the opportunity to come in and sit in the chairs here too was there, and nobody has shown up. So we could have been here, all of us today.
But that doesn't speak to your willingness to come, Stephen, which I think
right. I mean, yeah, we could.
I understand.
the opportunity to be there is there, but I would not have come in. I would still be virtual.
I think you're absolutely correct that there are people that are very concerned about coming in, for sure.
You know, and it's not out of fear or anything like that. It's I have family members that have we have elderly parents. You know, I have family members that have conditions that you don't want to jeopardize, and so you know, I'm just not going to come in until it's absolutely safe.
Right, and just like that, there's a myriad of things that go into that decision. You know, why you don't want to be in that, why you don't want to come in.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason?
I do have some questions and some comments. So Dr. Blickman, you're exactly right. The plan you put in front of us today was exactly what we asked for, right? Upon entering phase 4, and perhaps naively, we were all assuming things were going to continue to get better and better. So you put a plan in front of us that kind of assumed that was the direction things were going. I think the complication lies in the fact that they're not quite going that way. This is a very consequential decision, obviously, and the care and thoughtfulness that's in this plan is evident. So again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all who worked on this so hard. It's a consequential decision, right? There's many families who, if we are still in phase 4, are counting on the fact that we have an on-site option for them. There are other families who don't want their child within 100 feet of a school right now or in the foreseeable future. So it's a sticky wicket that we find ourselves in. I guess my questions then become, short of the state reverting back to phase 3 or worse, what would have to happen? I guess it gets to Stephen's initial question, which is, are we saying this is our plan come hell or high water if phase 4 is still in effect on August 20th? Are there any other conditions that would, I mean, we have the flexibility to revise this, right? Even if we're still in phase 4.
Definitely.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that. Another question I had is on the survey that's going out tomorrow, right? That survey is you are asking for planning purposes for families to declare their preference.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's to select so that we can plan. Yeah.
Not just declaring a preference. It's this is what you've chosen. This is what we expect you to do. Okay. I want to clarify that. Is there any guidance available for, let's say we do start school and 3 weeks in, there's some level of an outbreak. Is there any guidance to what would precipitate a school closing or the district reverting back to remote learning fully?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I was on a call today with other superintendents and a representative from the Lake County Health Department. And they will be, the health department will be providing us with a decision tree that will help to guide decisions like that. I haven't seen it, so I can't make promises as to what's in there because it's not been shared with me yet. What I've understood about it is that it will not clearly tell us, hey, if you have this many, students who are testing positive or staff members, then it's time to close. It will just help us work through those kinds of things. And then obviously we work with the health department. I mean, when we started this conversation a while ago and that question was, hey, are you looking at a test case in the summer? We look at Lake Zurich as our test case in so many ways. I can tell you they worked very closely with the health department to make those determinations as to what they were going to do. But we are waiting for more information from the health department.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Lake Zurich because I understand that they intend on doing on-site testing of students who are suspected. Is that correct? And is there any consideration of that in our district? I guess I'm getting to the point that we're trying to figure out, what exposure do we have from someone who might be sick? And are we expecting that someone who is suspected goes home and then they come back and circle back with us and tell us yay or nay, I do or don't have it?
Right. So we again, all of that is really going to be really clarified by the health department. I can share some information with you about that. And I'm going to just try to back up for a moment. When you talked about Lake Zurich doing testing, I think you're specifically talking about what's happening right now, that county is offering testing on their grounds because there was such an outbreak there. I don't think it's not, to my understanding, it's not an ongoing plan in District 95. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Very briefly, when somebody tests positive, there will be we'll get that information from that family. We are then required to let the health department know. They also get that information from the testing center as well. They get it directly from the doctor. They get it directly from whoever's doing that test. And then they will be working on the actual contact tracing. And then there's a lengthy explanation regarding people being sent home. But basically, anybody who has been within 6 feet of somebody who has tested positive and for at least 15 minutes, and I learned today that it doesn't have to be 15 consecutive minutes, it's 15 minutes total. Could even be over a series of a few days. Then those people who have had that contact need to go home and quarantine for 14 days. And it does not matter if they have tested negative. So somebody could have that contact, go home, get a COVID test negative, they still cannot be back on site for 14 days. So we certainly, under the plan of reopening, we expect lots of people, students and staff, to be flowing in and out of our schools, individuals, classrooms, grade levels, and also the potential of having to have a whole school close down and go remote. We see all of those things as strong possibilities, if not likelihoods.
Does the County Department of Health have an obligation to notify us?
Yes.
They do. So even if the parent forgets or neglects to do that, we will get that information one way or the other.
Yes. Yes, I believe so, but again, haven't seen the guidance yet. But yes, that's what my understanding is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Jason? Okay, Christy Braden?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I guess I have just some comments and suggestions rather than questions. Just really tactically, I think the Grays Lake Public Library, probably they're a little ahead of us and might have some expertise to offer around the book checkout stuff. They might be a great resource. And then I just agree with Jason about testing. I'm just wondering, is there a county resource that can help with testing, and would that be an advantage, as part of the protocol? So just two things that are on my mind that don't need to be answered tonight, but wanted to put out there. My bigger comment is really that around equity and how we ensure that this plan is equitable and anti-racist. So choosing remote learning is a privilege, and being able to be home with your kids is a privilege, and being able to pay for childcare if you can't be home with your kids is a privilege. And most of us, I would say, who are on this call have that privilege, including me and my family. I'm very fortunate. I want to call out the fact that many of our district families don't have that privilege. I'm sure in the spring, many of them had to make terrible choices that either left kids unsupervised or risked their employment. And, these are our parents that when we go to Jewel, that they're bagging our groceries and they're delivering our Amazon so we don't have to go out. And so, those families are probably underrepresented in this meeting, and they probably were underrepresented in this survey as well. And so part of the equity work that I try to take very seriously is to ask whose perspective is not in the room. And so I don't know that that perspective has been adequately represented, so I want to make sure that we brought that in. I know there's a root cause to that. I know that, we don't have a safety net in this country for people who have to make those terrible choices. And I know it's a systemic issue that we have to solve for. And I know many people that I know, both, on the board, within the community, are working on that. And I think that's amazing. We're working on trying to find community solutions to help each other out. That's awesome. In the meantime, in 6 weeks, these families are going to have to make a really hard choice. And we have to figure out how to support them. And so, even if we went to employers and said, Can you help us out? Can you help parents out? You know, Jewel has to stay open. Our first responders have to keep going to work and responding. And so we can't leave them out in the cold. So, you know, I think we can do two things at the same time. I think we can come together as a community and try to support those families who depend on school, like it or not, to help them stay employed. I mean, that's just the sad reality of the situation, is that many families depend on school to supervise their kids during the day so that they can work. I think we could, if we needed to, we certainly might need to do this, but we might, you know, be able to, like for myself, I have the privilege of being able to work from home, to say, hey, I'll host a couple kids to do remote learning in my home, to help families in that situation. We can advocate with employers. I don't think that that precludes us needing to offer some sort of at the very minimum, supervision or face-to-face instruction for those families who are in that situation. I think we can do both at the same time. So, and I would be remiss in not saying thank you to everyone who worked on this plan. It's incredible. And a special shout out to our union leadership. I just, you know, the partnership there means everything to me. So thank you.
Okay. The only comments that I have towards this is, you know, obviously this was the directive that they were given, was to follow the guidelines and come up with a plan for going back to school, for opening up the schools as we go forth. It's a pretty detailed plan. We are looking at 5 to 6 weeks before we go back to school, and a gazillion things could change between now and then. And as somebody did mention earlier, somebody could be making that decision for us, and it's out of our hands completely. Either a massive outbreak of cases where it really spikes, or the governor comes out and says, yeah, we're going to go all remote come beginning of the school year until the beginning of 2021. Those are all possibilities. So I don't think the staff is going to stop working on coming up with plans. They're going to have a plan for completely remote set up and ready to go by the beginning of the school year, only because that's what could happen. So this is their, you know, this is the plan that they have come up with regarding opening schools and to move forward. I think, you know, the majority of the plan, as you heard, focuses around the safety of the kids and the staff and the families of our students and staff. You know, the social distancing, the hand washing, the, you know, food prep, everything that goes into it was all about the safely opening the school. Christy Braden is right. There may be a lot of families that don't have an option, and they may be counting on us to actually do some of this face-to-face instruction so that they can get back to work. Well, to me, that is a lower on the totem pole priority beyond safety, but it is an important aspect of whatever plan we come up with. You know, we already talked when we first started going to remote, we scrambled to get laptops into families' hands who didn't have the opportunity to do so at the beginning of the school year. So we do have students and we do have families that are not as well off as probably, you know, we actually think they are. That being said, I think we have time to decide, and I would defer to the staffing plan or the staff and Dr. Glutman's guidance on where they feel safe to go forward. I would support whatever plan they came forward with for that general reason. They're putting in the work. They've done all the research. There's a lot of anecdotal stuff about, you know, where we're at right now and where we could be soon. And I would prefer, me personally, is we have time before we have to make a drop dead decision. And I think, you know, to me, I would support what the administration and the staff come up with.
Mr. Weidman, would it be helpful for me to describe what our next steps are regarding our planning?
Sure.
Okay, so we've talked about these 2 surveys that are going out. So then there's a little bit of a waiting period, right? There, you know, all the information is coming back in mid next week. In the meantime, next week, our focus is going to be on remote learning. We're really, we're going back to that table on that and really, well, you saw the slides where we talked about what our next steps are regarding remote learning and what we need to work on next. We're really going to be working on that. I will mention again that we are still waiting for updated guidance from the state of Illinois about remote learning, but we have a lot of information and we're going to keep working on that. Chris Woke and I and 3 other administrators have meetings set up with every one of our principals the week after next. At that time, we're going to be looking at what the results have been with both the staff and the families in terms of what the balance is. And then we are going to be working very hard to figure out what it means and how do we identify or how do we make everybody's hopes become realities. I guess it's the best way I can put it. So that's what we're doing moving forward. And so unless the board were going to ask us to halt those plans, that's what we'll be doing. I will tell you, I would be very concerned about halting the plans because it's information that we need right now in order to be able to plan. Even if, 2 weeks from now or a week from now, our board were to say, wait, we want you to halt. We don't want to be opening up at all. Unless that were to happen, we need to keep moving forward because there is so much planning that needs to be done. So board, are you comfortable with us moving forward with those steps right now?
Yeah, you have to plan, like you said. I mean, we have to have something in place.
Certainly.
Regardless of what happens. So, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Somebody asked me recently, what's the drop, what is that date by which we have, if we're going to make a change, we have to have made it? There really isn't one. The only thing we can't do is a week before school say, hey, let's figure out how to open school. Like that we can't do, right? But we can always revert back to an all remote plan if we need to.
Dr. Glickman, I have another, just a thought. So it's just for radar. But in the surveys that are planned to out in the future, it would be really helpful to know from the community what progress looks like and what success looks like. At the end of this, what is everyone expecting is going to happen with their kids, not just from a safety standpoint, but from an instructional standpoint, because many of the necessary changes, like removing furniture from classrooms and having all the desks face forward, force us to undo a lot of what we know about good instruction. At least that's my understanding. So it might be helpful, at least for me personally. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but what does equity look like? Does it look like computers in the hands of every kid? What does it look like to have a successful year instructionally, to have enough rigor in academics? What does it look like to have a safe classroom? Because if the air quality is infused with a lot of chemicals, even if they're EPA approved, those chemicals still have an impact on our kids' respiratory systems and on our teachers' respiratory systems. So what is it that we expect would be a fantastic, I know what I want, I know what my friends want, but I don't know what the community at large thinks success looks like. So that would be really helpful.
So that question that you're asking, Christy, I'm going to respectfully ask you to be thinking about that question a little while when I do a presentation about a tool that I am recommending to our board that we purchase. I'll be talking with you all during the superintendent's report, which, believe it or not, this is not the superintendent's report, and you get to hear a whole bunch of other things from me in a little while. One of them is about this tool, and that question that you just asked, I think, is the perfect kind of question to ask through that tool, should we choose to purchase it.
Thank you.
Jim, are we going to go to public comment?
We can. Would you like?
Probably we should. So
okay.
So as a reminder, what we said is that at this point, we're not going to be answering questions as a part of public comment. And I think Mr. Woke was going to be kind of summarizing some or other, I don't know, maybe you're going to read them all. I don't know how many there are. But questions that come up that are frequently asked questions will become a part of our FAQ. Please understand that tomorrow we're going to be releasing an updated version of the FAQ. It will not include these questions. That will come over time. Okay, so Chris?
Okay, hold on 1 second. We did have somebody from the public walk in. Do you have any public comment that you want to make or? Okay, hold on. Let me switch the camera. Hold on, see if I can do this here. Let's see. Can we see your?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I so appreciate all of the work that we've done. I'm so impressed with our superintendent, and I just want to thank you for that. And I think that I understand that there's board members who are concerned about their children's safety. It's very understandable in the situation that we're under. But when a school board is, or when a school is offering two choices, then there's an option for those people who are concerned for their children's safety to keep their children at home. It seems like there should be a choice for those who have looked at the data and come to a different conclusion and feel like it's okay and safe for their children to be able to come to school. So that I wanted to mention that. I also was just concerned about the comment about if somebody is tested positive, about the number of children that have to stay home for 2 weeks. That it could just that seems really difficult. And the number of times that your child may have to be home for 2 weeks never being sick, even if they test negative for the virus. So I just wondered about that. Not that you have an answer. That was just a concern that I had. I don't know if anybody could hear me, but.
Is everybody able to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Lynn, were you able to catch all that?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So,
Jim, I was not able to hear. Oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
okay, so most of her comments were regarding the fact that we were having two options for going back to school, a remote option and an in-school option. She acknowledged the concerns from the school board members about their students, then kids going back to school and not feeling safe about it. And she feels that it's important to have the option for the other parents who feel that, supported by the data that they've been looking at, allows them to make a choice about sending their kids to school. And she thanked Dr. Glickman and the staff for all their work. And I think I covered all that. Yes? Was there another part of that? Sorry.
That was all of that.
Okay.
Just also just that other point that it concerns me about the amount of times kids might have to do.
Right. So, okay. So if it, so there's a piece about if a child tested, how much time any student may be out because somebody in the classroom tested positive, and even if they've tested negative in the long run. So if I can get you to put your name and email address down so that Dr. Glickman can follow up with your question. Will that be okay?
Thank you.
Or I'll be following it up in the FAQ.
Right, or it'll be in the FAQ.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I would have come in sooner, but I thought it would be full.
Then do you want Chris to read questions?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, so we have close to 90, but we also have some that were regarding the sound issues at the beginning. So I'll skip over those. We knew those were going to come in. Ed Kostek, and first let me apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. It's not my intention to. So Ed Kostecki writes, will there be different service format used for online learning this upcoming semester than what was used in the spring? Nancy Grundy comments, Many districts are offering hybrid. Why is this not being offered? Diana Hogan comments, if I decide to send my children to school and someone presents themselves with the virus, will my children have to quarantine every time someone is confirmed positive? Sorry, just moving down. Shannon O'Brien, if the adults in charge of making decisions for the students and staff of D46 are mostly participating in this meeting via live feed, how can it possibly make sense to send students, teachers back into the buildings for face-to-face instruction? Have we forgotten we are in the middle of a pandemic? I would suggest that if a decision is made to go back to in-person learning, each board member and the district level administrative team should be present in each D46 school building every day, all day, to make sure that the schools are safe. We are talking about human lives. I'm not in favor of my children and the school and the faculty and staff who are in the building being guinea pigs while we sit back, watch, and cross our fingers, hoping everything will be okay. Are you prepared to explain any COVID-related illnesses or, God forbid, deaths amongst students and staff of D46 to the community? Why are we rushing back into things? The science shows that those states who've opened up are seeing spiked in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. I see many adults, children in the community who do not practice social distancing, wear masks, etc. Right now, how do we expect that adults and kids will abide by these safety measures in a school building? What is your plan for students, parents who do not follow protocol? Please consider human lives and well-being above all else and go to remote learning until there is a better handle on the pandemic and proven vaccines. Sam Reisman asks, if a staff member contracts COVID-19 or is forced to quarantine, will that count against sick days? Will it be paid? How will it work? Patricia Sorensen asks, if schools open, what are the safety precautions going to be? If the schools open, is there an emergency response plan and what is it? In terms of if staff or students get COVID, thanks for all that you do. I know that's a lot of tough decisions and factors right now. Nora Ramsey, in-school learning should be reserved for those who truly need the in-person instruction, therapies, or for safety concerns, those who live in violent situations or have domestic concerns, and those whose parents have no choice but working outside the home. I will be keeping my son home from D46 this year. We are even considering switching to homeschooling permanently. Just let me scroll through the sound ones. Mark Speisel says, how are you handling new students? I've been trying to call the school for over 2 weeks. Sorry, just got to get through the sound ones. Chris Young asks, why are teachers allowed to wear shields but children are not? Will assessments be done this year? How are school supplies being handled? Will it be streamlined due to technology? Will there more mental health services for all students? Will students be allowed to print out work at home and upload or submit for classes like math, etc.? Chris Young, all students will have problems speaking in class with masks. If shields are allowed for adults, it sends a negative message to students that they are not important. Jeremy Heinz, if you are meeting remotely, is it really prudent to bring our students, teachers, and staff back into schools? Tyler Fundman. As an Illinois resident, I believe we need to follow the successful phased guidelines our state has implemented and has worked. That is our guide. No parent is an epidemiologist, and we should stick to the experts to guide us rather than our using opinions. The state's phase 4 guidelines make clear in-person learning is acceptable, and these guidelines were created by doctors and epidemiologists. The sentiment that opening schools will accelerate spread is not for us to decide. It's up to the benchmark set forth by the state moving back to phase 3. Ashley Mahoney, I hope that you will be considering age-specific decisions. What is critical for K2 is not nearly the same for grades 6 through 8. For example, how would it be possible for students starting school for the first time ever to be remote? Students in the higher grades can at least navigate their academics from home with the support of their teachers remotely. I cannot say the same for my incoming kindergartner or second grader. I know there's no good answer, but please, I beg of you to not try to make one size fits all approach and consider varying ages within our district and in our schools. Jennifer Lawrence, what will band look like? Most important for my son and his decision will be based on this. Allison Brandow, if we end up in hybrid, can we still opt for 5-day remote? Kirsten Gatlin, will priority for in-person attendance be given to students with IEPs? Natalie Gomez, how are we going to do gym and band when a lot of people can't even breathe without them? Kim Petrie, please let me know about early childhood education. Chris Young, is it possible for a student to attend 1 day week in person and 4 days remote learning? Carrie Zook, regarding temperature taking, I've discussed this with many people, and trusting all families to take temperatures every day and reporting actual values is not something that we would be comfortable with. Too many people send sick kids to school and administer Tylenol or ibuprofen to reduce fevers. I guarantee that parents would be more than willing to provide infrared thermometers so that every teacher can test their children first thing in the morning and again at lunchtime. Please consider asking parents to provide thermometers. Richard Lang, I've been hearing that teachers unwilling to be at school to teach are getting doctors to write notes recommending them not able to work at school to avoid having to be at school to teach in person. What is the district and teachers doing to make sure that this isn't happening based off personal beliefs? Will those teachers be on non-paid leave if they choose not to teach in person? Thanks. Elizabeth Neese, what is the chemical that kills bacteria, sprays nightly in the classrooms? It won't kill the virus and might be harmful to the students and staff in case of long-term exposure. Jennifer Radiguero, the assistant principal at GMS, mentioned the district worked with an architect to determine seating and spacing for classrooms. What are the class sizes needed for 6 foot, 5 foot, 4 foot, and lastly, the least ideal 3 foot desk spacing? April Juxbusen, if symptoms are presenting, will testing be offered at the school? This seems to be the only way that a positive status can be relayed to all who have been exposed in a timely manner. Melissa Egbers, my daughter's classroom is to remain free of her allergies regardless of what you have decided to do with lunch. This means all her classmates have to have a peanut, tree nut, dairy, and egg-free lunch. She is not to be moved out of her safe learning environment, as that is the opposite of inclusion. How do you plan on handling this? Heather Case, So you are holding this board meeting virtually, but you expect my daughter to return to on-site learning in less than 4 weeks. Jennifer Rodrigo. I'm concerned that 6-foot distancing is not guaranteed during lunch. It's during lunch that students will be most at risk, given that they will be without masks and most likely talking to one. That alone creates an increased risk for shared germ particles. Distancing of less than 6 feet would seem to exponentially increase possibility of transmission. I do not understand how this is an acceptable risk the district is willing to take. Carrie Zook, what is the target class size and maximum size class allowed? Also, will the outdoor classroom be used every day and instruction held outside when possible? Jennifer Lawrence, how will teachers teach full-time in the classroom and teach remote learning as well? Those hours would be well beyond the teacher's contract hours. Lynn Otterson, this is absurd. You want my child to go back to full-time to a school that can't even curb norovirus properly. I'm going to trust their parents. I'm going to trust the other parents in the district who have been on vacation all summer with no regard for the rest of this town. I am livid. Be prepared for many angry parents. You have left us with choiceless choices. We do not need to bring all of these germs together in the building. This is a death sentence. I'm very, very upset. Your teachers are at risk. This is what you've been working on all this time. I thought we would see a staggered schedule like most other districts. This is very, very upsetting. Megan Wilhite, how will you be handling staffing for 2 completely separate school programs? Will there be teachers focusing only on remote learning and teachers who are only responsible for teaching on site? It seems like it would be impossible for a teacher to do both. Are you planning on hiring additional staff members? Heather Schaefer, will Chromebooks be provided for students below third grade if we choose the remote option? Carrie Zook, for remote learning, would this mimic more of a real class where the teacher would be providing full lessons and children watch from home? Or would this be like e-learning in the spring with minimal teacher interaction aside from daily Zoom check-ins? Jenna DiVincenzo, if Illinois or Lake County return to phase 1 through 3, will all students return to all remote learning? Ellen Fontanetta, what is the procedure if a teacher gets COVID? Does a substitute teacher come in? Do the children go into isolation? Amanda Buttle, if a person tests positive, will they be required to test again after 14 days? What if a person tests negative but still has symptoms? Are they to be tested again at some point or just come back after symptoms are gone? The symptoms listed by the school district and not the same as listed by IDPH. Mary Kenny, need more options for the kids 5 days or on or hell with 5 hours e-learning. This is not a plan. Jeremy Heinz, will all parents be notified if a child or adult tests positive for COVID? Since children can be carriers without symptoms, will self-certification questions include a question about other adults or kids in the household with symptoms? Will students on buses be the same kids as in each other's classes? What are the repercussions for students that break the social distancing guidelines? Can we choose to do school learning at the beginning and change our minds if we conclude that is too dangerous? For the students that aren't required to wear a mask, will the other parents be notified that there's a student that is putting our children at increased risk? Can first graders have an option for hybrid half-day learning? I'm not a fan of kids eating together. It seems like an unnecessary risk considering the situation. Nicole A. First responder families, how are we affected? Natalie Gonzalez. Will there be any sports at GMS? Matt Willen. I understand the safety reasons for half-day kindergarten. However, what is CCSD doing for families that signed up for full-day kindergarten due to parents working? Daycare centers likely will not have room for everyone that now needs extended before and after school care. This is a major oversight if nothing is being set up to put in place of the full-day kindergarten. Jennifer Kim. Since it has been determined that kindergarten is now half-day, are there no morning or afternoon school or after-school care programs right at school? Question mark. Christopher Dennett. What is the maximum number of students per class for on-site learning? This is anonymous, but it does have an email address. Is there any way working parents, two parents, or single working parent get priority for on-site learning? There's possibly no way I can manage 5 hours of e-learning for 3 kids while working a very demanding job. Something is going to have to give, either our jobs or learning. Clayton Gable. I'm dissatisfied with the options offered. Offering either full online or full on-site does not address any concerns brought up by the surveys sent out. You keep saying these are tentative plans, but yet you are asking us to commit to an option. I agree with what Stephen Strack said in terms of waiting to send kids back to school full-time right away. We are not prepared to choose between full online or full on-site. These options are inadequate considering the results of the surveys sent out and the state of the virus in the country. Carrie Musinski. What about parents that do not complete the survey? Are children enrolled in on-site or remote? Sala E. Nieto. Thank you for tonight's meeting. I understand that we need to choose whether we prefer on-site or remote learning, but I'm wondering if you would prefer us to commit to remote learning. Is this a preference you have? Is this a preference you have over on-site learning? I was just wondering. I completely understand the health concerns over on-site learning. Thanks again. Lisa Aiken. If Illinois continues to stay in phase 4, when will the decision be expected to be made as to if when school will reopen for in-person lessons? Jennifer Kasmer. What will class sizes be in 1st through 4th in order to ensure social distancing? The incoming 4th grade class, specifically at Avon, where my son attends, is quite large was quite large in the previous year. Laura Abundis. What accommodation will be made for students with autism? Jennifer Rodrigo. I may have missed this during the meeting, so I apologize if it was already asked or addressed. But what is the district threshold for community infection before all students and staff are moved to remote instruction? I believe the state of Illinois set the positivity rate to 8%. What is the district stance? Jennifer DiVincenzo. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone for providing their inputs and efforts. This is not an easy thing to do, regardless of what unfolds in the near future. Mary Bellamo. I would prefer school does not reopen under current circumstances. But if it does, I would feel more comfortable sending my child back into a physical space of there was a hybrid option. A-B teams or AM-PM teams, even with masks, students should be kept 6 feet apart within classroom spaces or have plexiglass between desks. It needs to be more than masks or 6 feet apart. Ashley Mahoney. I'm highly disappointed in this district for shortening are students who are just starting school. Half-day kindergarten, cutting curriculum, cut art and music and PE, not academic curriculum that is going to set them back even further. Kids are going to spend more time in daycare settings now. They will get plenty of art and PE in a daycare. Do you job and teach them as much as possible? Not to mention, we have no idea how long this will last. So you are cutting the academic experiences of all of these kids all year in July due to fear. Shame on you. When will, Amanda Buttle, when will the school year calendar be available? Chris Young, is there a possibility to start school earlier, go into fall, winter remotely? If the situation next year continues, can we as a district start earlier to avoid the cold and flu season? Lisa Aiken, how will remote learning be conducted? For example, will it be a live streamed version of the in-person class, or will it be completely separate from in-person learning? Carrie Zook, will there be requirements for families sending their kids back to school to follow the guidelines and laws set forth by Illinois? Meaning, there are families that currently travel to other states for vacation and sports and participate in activities that are not allowed in Illinois in phase 4. Will those families be required to quarantine for 14 days prior to sending their children back to on-site classroom? Amanda Buttle, if we or our children do not feel safe at school, can we pull them out to finish the remaining trimester from home without punishment? Michelle Wilhite, can you share or make available the data around how COVID affects children that is being used to determine opinions around whether or not to open? Also, in response to the comments around the financial impact on a school, I'd also like to mention the financial impact of families that don't have childcare when they depend on the 2-income working parents. How will companies forgive parents that can't actually work the day because they're homeschooling? Lastly, I strongly believe the safety of my children should be the decision of their parents. Angelica Sanchez, can you please reshare or show again the sample daily e-learning schedule? Suzanne Deal Crook, if we start in trimester 1 as a remote learner, 2nd grade, then move to on-site in 2nd or 3rd trimester, will the student have their same teacher? Whether or not it is the same or different teacher, how will these midterm, new to the room students be introduced and assimilated into the classroom? Side note, very well done presentation. Thank you. Would love more detail on the remote program before we have to make a decision. Amanda Buttle, how frequently will IDPH be checked for updates? When the pandemic first started, the information changed very fast. How will the districts keep up? Will families be updated via email or robocalls? Natalie Gonzalez, are we still going to have late starts? Amanda Buttle, if we have to close school again, will K2 get Chromebooks? Suzanne Beal Crook, please provide more details on how specials will be handled for remote learners, specifically 2nd grade Woodview. I consider these specials as valuable to learning as the core subjects and really would like to understand how they will be provided. Thank you. Shannon Kincaid, I hear all of the commitments required for remote learning for students. As a dual income essential worker family of small children, how could we possibly use this option effectively? I'm genuinely asking because maybe other families have figured out a way to make it work. I'm struggling to comprehend how we choose this option and commit 5 hours of mandatory class meeting working effectively for our children, for our child who would need help with both technology and concepts, as well as all while we have full jobs. One parent from home one from outside the home. Thank you for any resources or suggestions that might help me better explore this option. Tim Scott, how many students will be in a classroom for on-site learning? What is the maximum number? Michelle Rudertulo, can kindergartners choose remote or on-site learning? How many hours of work will be required for kindergartner to do during remote learning if possible? When will we find information regarding Chromebooks? Will they be available for K2 students? What is the cost? What is the procedure for receiving? If remote learning, is it possible to use Zoom rather than Google Meets? Google Meets glitched numerous times in the spring, and it was difficult to see the entire class and navigate. Zoom seems much easier to navigate. Thank you for all your hard work. John Zazadil, self-certification is great, but there's no way to assure it is monitored or properly followed or done correctly that puts our children at risk. Asking someone to say their child was fever-free before they went to school, but once at school they are symptomatic is a huge risk, and there needs to be a better way to address, perhaps taking temp taken before students are allowed to enter school. Do not leave it up to parents. They will make us all sick. Thoughts? Neil Darin, in respect to funding, to improve remote learning, what funding will be devoted to that effort, as it appears that much of the funding will be directed to on-site health and safety rather than improving the education of our students? Second question, the remote learning plan stated focus toward core curriculum. It was noticeable that science, technology, the arts were omitted in remote learning this past spring. These are also crucial to children's education as well and well-being, self-expression. How does the district intend to address these needs for remote learners? Gina Kim. First of all, thank you all so much for this evening. I have 3 questions based on recent developments and findings. The true role of children and teenagers in spreading the coronavirus is still not fully known. The explosion of young students contracting the virus all across the country, like Zurich has an outbreak, like Zurich has an outbreak, an outdoors camp, sports camp. This is happening while schools are closed. If parents don't feel a hybrid option is safe enough this fall, will their children suffer or fall behind in his or her academics? Will they have mass breaks other than at recess? 5 hours of instruction is a long time for a child to be in a mask. Disinfecting is one thing, but what about the air? This virus is highly aerosolized, and its duration is in enclosed spaces that makes it extremely infectious. Will windows at least be open in each classroom if it is feasible? Will our children be breathing in recirculated air? Please address windows, venting, heating, air-conditioned, recirculated air. And that is it for public comment.
Okay. Okay, that's a lot to catch up on for staff. As Dr. Glickman had stated before, there will be a FAQ released tomorrow. Hopefully we can get as much of that answered as we can. I think some of those will be answered tonight as we go through some of this, especially the part about the computers and that for the lower grades. We did have one more person walk into the meeting room here. Do you have a public comment you would like? Okay, I'm gonna turn the computer towards you if you want to come a little bit closer so that they can hear you and see you.
As I sat at home and hearing all you guys talk, not one of you guys brought up the emotional issues of these children. How they're going to be introduced to teachers via computer, or how they're going to be introduced as classmates under masks, being kept 6 feet away from each other. You guys are more or less thinking and following the guidelines of the state, but you're not thinking of the well-being of children in some ways. Yet I'm also worried about the fact of how you guys are going to keep these kids with these masks on, and how you're going to teach them with all this going on. Nobody has stated anything about motion, and I cannot believe I don't see Miss Payton on here. I mean, why don't we have any school psychologists or anything talking here? Why is nobody involved in any of this group planning that I see? That's my big thing here. I don't hear any emotional thing. And how are you going to introduce these children to their new teachers and say, this is the person you're going to do? And how do you expect these parents to sit at home and teach 2 to 3 children 5 hours pop? I had to get a laptop from you guys and divide it between 2 children, which was absolutely the worst thing ever. I had to split my day into so many different directions. By 8 o'clock, I was hitting the pillow and dying. I understand you guys have your own things, but how are you going to help us? And then we're 3rd graders going into Google Classrooms or in different aspects and not using Seesaw and things like that they've been accustomed to. And you're going to change that and not give them any instruction ahead of time. That's a huge, huge problem for me too. You've not outlined any of those plans.
Okay. Can I, ma'am?
Yes.
Can I get you to write your name and an email address so that Dr. Oops, I'm going to give you this one, so that Dr. Glickman can, we can work on getting you a response back, please? Thank you.
Tim, I just have a question, and then I just wanted to take a brief moment to talk about kind of how we'll respond to the breadth of questions. Okay.
Okay.
First of all, I just got a message from Stephanie Arnapin. Chris, she says that she submitted 2 public comments and neither of them were read. I don't know if you are able, actually, here's what we'll do. Stephanie must be hearing me because she just emailed me. So Stephanie, if you will email me your your comments, I will read them. That might be the best way to go. And so I'll make these statements and then I'll go back and see if I got that email from Stephanie and we'll just multitask a little bit. I simply wanted to state that so thank you so much to all of our community members for your feedback. It is very useful. We're always grateful to hear from people. And a lot of the questions that were specifically questions are things that I think are addressed in the written document that we've put together that this presentation was based upon, because as much as this was a lengthy presentation, there's a lot of information, we do have more details to share. So we are going to go ahead. We weren't going to send that out till tomorrow, but I think that some of our community members would feel comforted by being able to see that this evening. So I have asked our webmaster, Leslie, to go ahead and get that posted tonight. So we will do that at some point this evening. Then tomorrow, that will be sent to our families along with the FAQ. The FAQ also does respond to many of those questions. We will not be able to respond to more questions overnight that aren't in the FAQ that's ready to go tomorrow. But in the coming days, we will continue to be updating it and we'll let people know as we are updating as we can. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I'm just going to see if I have a public comment. I'm not seeing it. And Chris, do you see a public comment from Stephanie Arpelin? Okay, so I think we can continue with our meeting. And if, oh, yes, I have the finger maybe from.
Yeah, Lynn, they're not coming through on the Excel file that I was using to read them off of. So I'm going to have to go into the actual form itself.
So there are going to be some more, is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, this is showing 150 comments.
Well, we're not going to be able to get to all 150 comments. I know that's hard to, especially since a lot of them have been focusing on the same aspects of, same topics. A lot of those were repeats that you did give us already. So I guess I would, if you could briefly peruse through there and see if there's any that are of a different topic other than what has already been discussed. And then we will do our best to get back to those that have commented.
Jim, do you want Chris to do that now, or do you want him to kind of scan through them during the meeting and then he can share them at the end?
We can do that. You can share at the end. That way we can move through the rest of the meeting here.
Okay.
We'll try and hit that at the last end of it there.
Okay, okay. When we've pulled, when we feel like we have exhausted this conversation, I do want to respectfully invite our staff members who so generously have given up their evening to go off the call. As much as we will love to have you on the call, we will understand if you need to back out. So Jim, is there anything that you wanted to talk about to close this up?
No.
Okay. Well, again, just like our board members have stated, I really do need to, by person, thank our union leadership. That would be Coy Flores, Jen Miller, Lynn Miscelonis, Amy Forrest, and Leslie Armstrong McLeod as well. The collaboration between this team and our administration has been outstanding, along with the nearly 100 people that have been meeting together. And as we know, that grouping of staff members included just about every single job category, all kinds of teachers, specialists, school psychologists, social workers, librarians, school secretaries, just, every kind of job category we can think of was a part of that group. So thank you to all of you and staff members. Some of you I'm meeting with again tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. So go home or go take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, next up on the agenda is board reports. Anybody have any board reports?
So Stephen and I were supposed to give you an update on the community connections team. I'm wondering if we can do that at the next meeting. Would anyone be opposed to that?
I agree with it.
I agree.
Okay.
I thought so. All right.
All right. Hearing no other board reports, Dr. Glickman, we're back to you.
Oh my goodness, aren't you tired of me by now? All right. I'm looking to, okay, I'm going to take a quick walk through a bunch of things. So I want to start by talking about strategic planning, and this I would actually bump to the next meeting, but there are some budgeting matters related to this, and we are going to be presenting a tentative budget at the next meeting, which is why I think it's important to do this here. So board members, you may remember that at our last meeting, I talked about the need for engaging in a strategic planning process in the 2021 school year, and that we have some inherent road bumps in doing that, because when you do strategic planning, you want to be able to gather people together, and we don't really know if we can literally physically gather people together. And you want it to be able to be a wide view of what is needed in a school district rather than the tunnel vision of, oh my goodness, we're in the middle of a pandemic and what do we need to do now? So those are a couple of challenges that we have ahead of us. I shared with you an idea for being able to gather thoughts from all of our stakeholders. And that is a tool that I have a little bit of experience with, called Thought Exchange. And I shared with you last time a little bit about what it does. I was asked, kind of challenged with, hey, is there something else out there that does something similar that would be lower cost? Because this tool that I want to talk with you about does cost $12,000 for one user. And this one user is what we would need for strategic planning, although ultimately I think if we end up purchasing this tool, there will be so many uses for it, including, as I alluded to earlier to respond to Christy Miller, the ability to gather some community thoughts around the pandemic as well. In any case, I'm going to give you a very brief explanation, which is that in Thought Exchange, you send out an electronic poll question. However, it is an open-ended question. It is not a yes or no. It is not choose from these 5 options. It is just a question that people respond to. Anybody can be participating in a Thought Exchange. There's no limit to how many people who can participate. And people give this, and it's very simple. You just click on a link in order to be able to participate. You answer the question. You just type in your answer on your computer, or you do it on a phone as well. And then it doesn't just go back to the person who sent out the question, which, as we know, is exactly what happens with a Google form, right? It just comes back to me. I get to look at your answers, and then I get to tell you what you said. Instead, you as a participant have a chance to see a lot of other people's answers too. They're anonymous, but you get to see other people's answers. And then you have the opportunity to rate those other people's answers from a 1 to 5 starring. Not whether you think it's a great answer, but whether or not you agree with it. And what ends up happening is that the thoughts that a lot of people have about a topic rise to the surface. I will share with you that I did look to see if there was another tool around that did something similar. I could not find one. I took a look at 2 other tools that were less expensive, but in both of those cases, one was SurveyMonkey and the other one, hold on, was Poll Everywhere. They don't do what Thought Exchange does because the answers are still just one way. They just come back to the person who sent them out. As well, for Poll Everywhere, there's a 200-person response limit for every poll question. So if we wanted to use something for strategic planning where we want to send it to anybody who wants to participate in our community, that wouldn't work for us. I do have a really short, I think it's under 2-minute video that I would love to show you so you get a better picture of what this is. So my friend Chris Vipond, I think, might be ready to show us that video. Am I right, Chris?
Yes.
Awesome.
Just a second.
And Chris, I know I gave you 2 videos. We'll skip the second one. We're all tired. We're just going to do the first one.
Perfect.
Okay.
Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
All right.
As a leader, I've always valued getting in a room with a small group of people because you can listen to everyone's voice and have a powerful deep dive into what they want, their desires. What if you could have that same powerful conversation with 2,000 people, with 4,000? That's the game changer Thought Exchange has brought to my district.
The reason why I started working with Thought Exchange was I wanted to find a way to crowdsource or gather input from a dispersed global team of about 100 people. I wanted to do it in a way that was interactive and fun and wasn't going to be too burdensome or process heavy, I guess you might say.
One of the great things I saw about Thought Exchange is, first of all, it's really easy to use. So you're seriously just sending out a link and people just click on that link and they can write a thought and then start rating. By making it easy and by making it intuitive, I think that the users find it naturally engaging.
Thought Exchange has a 3-step process where you share your thoughts, then you get to star thoughts or others that you agree with, and then discover what everybody's thinking. The nice thing about the Discover is you can see a variety of data. You can see folks' top thoughts, the ones that folks had the most stars on. You can go into themes that you've seen. You can look at hot topics where there's 2 groups. One view is this way and the other view is totally polarized the opposite. And then you can look at what are the common interests between those 2 groups. Often they have same common interests, a good place to start in working with folks.
I see people talking about, why don't we launch a Thought Exchange? And when they're saying that, they're saying, I really want to know what people think. And that's actually something I think that we all should care more is what other people think. I think we put a lot of value in what we think and what our bosses think and perhaps what the client thinks or the shareholder thinks, but we don't put a lot of value into what everybody else thinks. So when we talk about, we're going to have an offsite or we're going to launch a new product, when we say, let's launch a thought exchange, we're actually saying we want to hear how people feel and we're willing to address what comes out of it. And that in and of itself to me is a wonderful shift in culture. And I think it shows tremendous courage as well as being very timely with what people expect from their organizations and from communication tools today.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm wondering if anybody has any response to what you just saw.
Lynn, I have just a thought. Is it possible to collaborate with the village so that we're not just listening to stakeholders who have a child in the district, so that we're getting our 127 parents who have had children in the district, and so more importantly, so that we're getting to people who don't have kids in the district?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. When we do something like this, we are limited only truly by who knows that we're doing it. So as long as we do a great job in informing people, we can have all, a wide variety of folks participate, absolutely.
Hi, Lynn. This is Tamika. To piggyback on Christy's question, could we look for some alliances in the village? And I'm thinking of it more from a cost share perspective. So if it's something that different entities within the village feel like it's a great tool, whether it's from, the water department or just pick an entity within the village that feels like they may be able to tap in and take advantage of this. Could we explore cost share since it is one of the more expensive options out there?
So we absolutely can pursue that. Absolutely. And I think that would be wonderful. I'm not feeling very confident that they will say yes because it's on the one hand, it's more expensive than the other options. On the other hand, what we get for it makes it not all that expensive. And probably I'm going to stop there and just simply tell you, we will pursue that and see what they say. Absolutely. I hope they're not listening to me say, no, they probably won't. Let me rephrase that. I think should say
Somebody
yes.
crumble some paper.
Yeah. I think they should say yes.
Yes.
We'll see.
So I'm curious how that fits in with the larger budget too, and I don't know if you can answer that now. I know that the reopen has taken most of your attention, as it should have, but I'm just curious. It is a tool, and that's part of the strategic planning process. So I'm wondering how that fits in with the rest of the budget.
Absolutely. Mary and I sat and looked very closely at the board budget and the superintendent's budget. And because I was committed to, hey, if we're going to purchase something like this, how can we do it so that we are not actually significantly increasing either of those budgets? We actually saw a pretty easy give back regarding that, or an easy way to fit it in, which is travel. Because we know that there's a superintendent's travel budget, there's a board travel budget. There's travel. It feels so unlikely that there will be a lot of travel this year. And I wondered, I know that there have been times in the past where the board committed that if anybody was going to go to the national board conference, which includes travel, maybe only 2 people would go. Now, this past year, a lot of board members were planning to go to the conference because we were presenting, and it was in Chicago. Oh, and then it got canceled. But that would be a way that we could feel a little more comfortable affording it, is if we would go back, at least for the year, to only 2 board members going to a national conference, if that even exists. And then there's the Triple I conference, which we all find very valuable. So I would never suggest that we don't go, but I question whether it's even going to happen.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you for that, because it's good to know it'll be offset by travel or conference attendance.
So,
My question's a little bit different though. It's just in
oh,
terms of strategic planning, is that the final cost of the whole process? So, for example, we talked about the role of a facilitator. I'm also wondering if we're bringing people in, do we need to buy Post-its? Like, is that the whole process is to use that one tool, or is it part of a bigger plan?
so certainly a part of a bigger plan, but I think that bigger plan is extremely connected to our ability to be on site or not. If we can have people on site, we could do something where we're doing the thought exchange first, and then we have people on site who are looking at those processes or the results. Then we're talking, I'm a little bit less worried about Post-its, but there are other costs for bringing people in, but it would not be terribly expensive then. That's what that's what we've looked at so far.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any other questions for Dr. Glickman? Okay. Do you have all your did you get your answer?
Well, I guess I'd like to know if the board is interested in us pursuing this. Do you think it would be a tool that would be useful for strategic planning?
I do. Anyone else?
I do as well.
Yeah,
I
same here. I
agree.
do as well.
Yep. And even
agree, I
more
agree.
attractive given the offset of costs.
Okay.
I
All right.
agree.
Wonderful. Then we will go ahead and embed it into our budget, and we'll keep moving forward with what strategic planning might look like in the new year. Thank you for that. Okay, my next topic is calendar changes. So I talked about this for a moment during the presentation, I think. We will be bringing you a revised calendar at the next board meeting, and I just wanted for you to have some information about it ahead of time, because some of these calendar changes are written about in the plan that's being posted tonight. And it was kind of a cart before the horse, because we have to be able to share some information. I mentioned to you that we have an interest in moving the October 9th Institute Day to August 19th, allowing staff to have 3 days to prepare for this very unusual year. And so even though you're not voting on the changed calendar right now, I would need to know if people had a concern about that plan. Okay, I'm going with silence as agreement, and that we can move forward with that plan. I think the way we have it written in our written plan is pending board approval. You haven't just given approval because you'll vote on it at a board meeting, but at least I feel comfortable that we can go ahead with the publishing of that. And, frankly, people need to know, hey, school's going to start a day later than they thought it was going to. We also, based on the guidance that we have from the state, have the ability to have 5 remote learning planning days spread throughout the year. Our calendar committee has agreed that it does not make sense right now to pre-schedule those, that we really need to know when it is that we are going to want to use them at the time. So just letting folks know that that will be updated as we go. It won't require board vote as we go, just like it didn't in the spring. We'll just be announcing these spread apart remote learning days as our teachers need them for their planning. And certainly we could see situations where, as we talked earlier, we could be opening up and then suddenly everybody's going remote. We could have teachers who were planning to be on site and suddenly needing to be remote who may need that day. So those are the kinds of reasons that we might be spreading them out. And the last calendar piece that I wanted to share with you is not in any way related to COVID-19, but simply, as we've talked about at other board meetings, we are now required to close on Election Day. So our calendar committee did meet and talk about it, and really the best plan that we could come up with was tacking it on, that extra day, tacking it on to the end of the school year. So we'll be closed on Election Day, and then we'll go one more day at the end of the school year. And you'll see that at the next board meeting. Okay, news about Chromebooks, because this was brought up earlier, and I feel like we need to share this information with you. So yesterday, late in the morning, Chris Vipond, our Director of Technology, received some difficult news. I have to tell you that at this time, he has already solved the problem for the most part. So I'm really excited to tell you that. What he learned yesterday was that the plan that we had, the Chromebooks that we had committed to, were not going to be shipped to us until, and teachers haven't heard this yet, so just a little bit of dramatic pause, until September 30th. That did not go over well with us and does not in any way fit in with the plans that we are making. What they shared with us, and I'm actually going to read a sentence from the email that we got. Unfortunately, every school district who placed an order within the last 2 or 3 months is in the same predicament. On a global scale, all of the manufacturers of all of the piece parts that it takes to completely assemble and manufacture a Chromebook are in short supply due to customers ordering 2 to 3 times their usual requirement. And as a reminder, of course, we are ordering Chromebooks for kindergarten through 2nd grade, which we hadn't done in the past. Chris spent much of the day today researching this topic and finding another option for us, which he was able to do. And therefore, we will be able to purchase Chromebooks that are actually newer, a higher quality, newer Chromebook at almost the exact same purchase price. He did a great job of negotiating with a couple of companies. They're not going to show up as soon as we'd like, but the company that we're working with for this, with this new Chromebook, is telling us that they believe that we'll have them by August 30th, not September 30th. So we recognize we will still have some problem solving to do. Teachers, we have some problem solving to do, but we are much more comfortable problem solving around a few days rather than well over a month. Chris, is there anything that you want to add to that before I talk about the lease issue?
I don't think so. You covered just the shortage across the globe for obvious reasons, but the different manufacturers, obviously different lead times and different parts, and this would be a change in device and a change in manufacturer, which gives us a little bit of a better opportunity to get them sooner.
And we feel, we were very careful and slow and intentional a couple of years ago when we selected Chromebooks, and we had a huge committee. We frankly want to go. We can't pull everyone back together and look at this other Chromebook. We did have a few people look at what this one would offer, and we're comfortable with moving forward because we need to get them into the hands of our kids. So one thing that the board needs to know is that tonight we were meant to be voting on you were meant to be voting on a lease. And so Mary and I have talked about it, and our recommendation is that we table that vote for tonight because we're going to need to put another lease together for you. As well, as someone alluded to earlier, just yesterday, we got the news that a new grant is going to be available for school districts, the Elementary and Secondary Relief Digital Equity Grant, that will assist school districts in closing the digital divide and enabling digital age teaching and learning. We are hopeful that we will be able to apply for those funds to actually pay for much of the rest of the cost of the Chromebooks. Remember, we are already using a grant to pay for the first half. We're hoping, but I mean, this is news from yesterday, so we don't know a lot yet, but we're hoping we'll be able to apply and receive grant funds for the second half as well. If not, we'll need to do a lease, so we'll be bringing that to you at the next board meeting. Jim, are you comfortable with that idea of just pulling it off? Because we don't know what else.
That sounds like the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, it does. All right, next, regarding also related to COVID-19. Okay, so earlier in the summer, if not, I think it was late in the spring, the administration came to the board and asked the board to extend the deadline for discounted fees for student fees. So remember, there was one date where parents could complete their registration and get a discounted fee, and we asked you to extend it, and you agreed to that. Well, the extension was till July 15th, today. At the time, it made some sense because we didn't know at that time that, oh, July 15th is the date that we are presenting our plan. It does not feel comfortable to me and to some of the administrators that I talked about to make a presentation tonight, tomorrow send out information to parents along with all of the detailed information about, hey, if you haven't yet registered for school, here's what you have to do. But then, so sorry, you've missed the deadline for the discount. It's just not comfortable. And so it is my request, board, that we be able to extend that date at least until the date that by which we're asking our parents to make that commitment. So it's just July 21st. So we're just looking to extend the date to July 21st. Are you comfortable with that?
Dr. Glickman, I am personally. I do have, I guess, a secondary question that I'm anticipating that will come as a result of that. So for families that option for online or remote learning, is that going to impact the registration cost at all?
It does not. Yeah, no, it does not. We are still required to pay for all of the things that we are required to pay for, and so no, it does not.
Okay.
Dr. Glickman, is there any restriction for extending the deadline even further?
There isn't.
I don't personally, I don't even feel comfortable asking for it by next week. I think if we are in this pandemic for the long haul, maybe we can be cognizant to that for families and extend it even to the beginning of school. Whatever school looks like. Whatever school looks like.
Yeah. And today also happens to be the tax deadline. So for those that have to write a big check for that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I would concur with Stephen, extending it just as long as we can, or as long as is
reasonable,
practical, reasonable. We can't obviously go forever,
right?
But if we're just going to keep extending it anyway, then let's just extend it and be done with it.
I would say the one advantage we have as to putting a deadline on it, and maybe a little sooner rather than later, is simply because we do want people to register and to complete this process so we really know what our staffing is and who's going to be in school. So, it just gives people a little bit of an incentive to get registered.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is that if you need X number of weeks to get all of that worked out after registration, maybe work backward from whatever, or from whatever date that is, and allow yourself enough time to do those things, but extend it as long as we can.
Okay. Board, are you comfortable with, are you comfortable with our administration just then talking that through and making a decision? Okay. Okay, that's what we'll do. Thank you so much. I'm sure our community members will appreciate that. Last meeting, within a context of a conversation we were having, one of the board members asked me how many homeless families we have in the school district. So that's just families that qualify under the McKinney-Vento Act. And I told you I'd bring that information today, and I have done so. So we had, as of last year, 10 families that included 14 students who qualified as homeless under McKinney-Vento. And my very last piece is just wanting to recommend some team members. I already recognized our teachers and support staff union. So again, thank you to those people and all of the 105 members of our reopening team. And I specifically, on a whole other matter, want to recognize our EL director, Stephanie Diaz, who has been invited to work at the state level to update and create Spanish language arts standards. And that will lead to a new Spanish assessment in the state of Illinois. She was recommended as a practitioner with deep knowledge of bilingual Spanish instruction and standards. So this is just an extra thing that Stephanie is doing to give back in our state, and we are really proud that you are ours. So I just wanted to make that announcement. And that is it for me for now.
Okay. Congratulations, Dr. Diaz. It sounds like you got your work cut out for you. All right, so next is committee reports. First one is the Community Engagement Committee. You were tabling anything for that, right?
We were, yeah, we tabled
Okay.
it.
And then next is the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
Christy Braden, were you going to talk, or do you want to just hold it for the next meeting and we can talk about?
Christy left the meeting.
Oh, she did? Okay, I'm gonna say, that committee has been doing amazing on tons and tons of work. We're meeting every 2 weeks right now, and I think at this point, at this late hour, it makes sense for us just to do a report about it next time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, next up is the consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the personnel amendment that was sent to you earlier tonight.
So moved.
So second.
Nash,
Aye.
McCroy,
Aye.
Rapp,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. Okay, next is action items. The first one is I need a motion to approve the board policies. Issue 103, these are the policies that we discussed last meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Aye.
McCroy,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Okay, we are tabling the motion to approve the Colebrook lease based on the new information we got tonight. So next will be a motion to approve a resolution regarding school reopening for the 2020-2021 school year. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that, or Dr. Glickman, would you like to explain what this is for?
Sure. This resolution allows us to move forward in our planning processes without having to go through all of our board policies and vote on and write new language for them and vote on changes to them. So the kindergarten change, which I again want to take the opportunity to comment, was a painful decision to make. But in our policy, based on decisions made years ago, it says that we have a full day kindergarten. So that's a perfect example of, in order to go to a half day K, we would have to go through the process of writing new language and then the board voting on that change. So this resolution, under the pandemic, during this very unusual time, gives has the board give me the authority to make some of those changes, with the caveat that I need to do that with ongoing communication with all of you. So I need to be talking with you, updating you, making sure that you're comfortable with us moving forward with plans without actually having to go through all of our policies and vote on policy changes. It's been recommended to us by our attorney, especially because there are the things that we think might happen right now, and then there are the changes that will continue to come down the line.
One clarifying question is this is a temporary situation. So at the end, there will be a point where we would just revert back to the policies as written. Is that correct?
Absolutely, nor
Yeah.
is it a carte blanche to change all the policies.
Yeah, yeah.
It's dealing with things that are specific to the needs of the district under this pandemic situation.
And it's not prescriptive of any particular plan. It's just gives you flexibility to be adept to move to wherever we need to go.
Yes, exactly.
And Lynn, as Kevin was doing this review and providing guidance, did he provide any insight or guardrails for any unintended consequences that we just want to be mindful of going forward with this approach?
He didn't. I would say the unintended consequences are my board being really unhappy with the decision that I've made. But I work so hard to be in communication with all of you that I like to believe that that wouldn't happen.
Good deal. Thanks.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Do we have to vote on this tonight? Can we think about it a little bit longer? It just seems like something that requires a little more thought. Is that possible to do it in August? Or do you need it now? Do you need it now, Lynn?
I don't. I mean, I think, the big thing that jumps out at me right now is half-day K, which we've announced, and is not in alignment with the board policy. As long as you're all comfortable with, okay, that right now, and that means that either you'll eventually vote on the resolution, or if you vote the resolution down, you'll recognize that you're going to eventually need to vote on that policy. I'm comfortable.
I'd appreciate that if we can, and unless there's something that's in your way right now that you need resolved.
No, this was recommended by our attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we did have a first and a second, so I will ask a consensus vote on if we for tabling it. So just look for a consensus if you want to table it. Stephen Mack.
We can table it.
Okay, Tamika.
I'm okay with that.
Jason.
I guess I'd like to know from Kevin if we're operating contra our policies in the interim. Does that present us any problems? If not, I'm okay with tabling it. Because currently we are, we're kind of operating contra of the policies, and there seems to be some risk right now of that. So there might be more time urgency than it seems. I don't know. What do you think of that, Lynn?
Well, I don't really have the ability to check with our attorney about that right now. I think, what I can tell you is that it's not that he just reached out to me and said, "Hey, Lynn, I think you should have this resolution." I've seen various attorney firms writing these and sending them to their superintendents. So it was nothing specific to our school district. I think this is kind of a concept that's happening out there right now for the short term to get us through.
Allows us the legal liability, allows us the legal cover to operate outside of the policy.
Exactly.
Based on the extreme circumstances that we're in.
Yeah.
That's the main part. Otherwise you start looking at, you have to have a meeting to change the policy. You got to vote on the policy. You got to adopt the policy, and then you got to turn around and, maybe a year, you got to turn around and return it back to normal.
Well, how about this then? If you raise the issue to Kevin, say, is there any risk in operating without this until August 15th or whenever our August board meeting is? We could convene a special meeting in the interim, right? If he thought that was necessary.
Yeah,
we can.
Okay, I'm good with tabling it then.
Okay. Stephen Strack.
I'm okay with it. I'm thinking the same way that Jason is, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Based on
So if you want to get some more guidance from
Sure.
Kevin, and if we need to convene a special meeting, we can do that.
Sure, my pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I withdraw my motion to approve the resolution. All right, so moving on to unfinished business. Next would be Mary for cash flow projections.
Okay, thank you. I don't have much in the way of new information to share with the board, so I'll keep this nice and brief, given the late hour that we're finding ourselves in. The update that I can provide is that we have received the 4th property tax distribution from Lake County, and that puts our collection at $17.7 million for the 2019 levy, which is 95% of the first installment. That puts our cash balance as of June 30th at $17 million, which is a little bit more than we had projected. If you recall, John and I were projecting a 90% collection by June 30th. So we're in a really good place as far as that goes. We have no new information to share related to state or federal funding. So that's all we have tonight related to cash flow.
Okay, thank you. The next one is a board resolution advocating for increased funding. This was something they came up with through the legislative review that I had read through one of the emails. It was a suggestion that we would adopt a resolution advocating for more funding. I reached out to IASB for some guidance and some language, and they were nice enough to provide me with it's not a template, but it's the one that the CPS, or Chicago Public Schools, has used, advocating for more funding for our school district. So it is, I did do a little wordsmithing on some of it, only because a lot of it did apply to, the language more applied towards the city of Chicago. So I tried to make it apply more to public education as a whole, and not necessarily specific to urban centers. So the copy is in the board agenda for you. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to look at it. But I think it is something, especially with the not only the threat from the federal government to remove funding from education if we don't open schools, or the state doesn't open the schools. We still have to provide education. We still have to provide all the services to all of our kids. We still have to provide the money to our teachers to work. So with all the changes due to the pandemic, this is a draft resolution that would, I would like to see us send on to our federal and state legislators. Anybody have any comments on that, or fairly good with what was written?
Only comment I have, Jim, is good job. I think this is really great to just show our support and advocacy for additional funding for students here within our district. So nice job.
Again, I'm not going to take all credit. A lot of it was CPS. So. Okay, so we can move that on to the next agenda then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. The next is a discussion of, hold on a second, my printer didn't work well. New business is discussion of a contract with RJB. Who's going to take care of that?
The board has the option to extend the contract with RJB for night custodial services. RJB has been providing these services for the district since October of 2015. So we have a nice 5-year history with RJB. The district has been very pleased with the services that have been provided. We are at the point in our contract cycle where every year we would need to bring to the board the option to extend for 1 year. So the initial contract was for a 3-year time period, followed by an option to extend for 2 years. And now we're in that cycle where the board has the option to extend for 1 year at a time. And the proposal that RJB has brought before the board represents a 4% increase in cost. This cost is primarily driven by the statutory increase in the Illinois state minimum wage rate. If you recall, there are 2 increments for wage rate increases in this particular school year. The first one having occurred July 1st, 2020 of 75 cents per hour. And then the second one occurring January 1, 2021 of $1 per hour. So basically in the school year, it's $1.75 per hour minimum wage rate increase. And that is the primary driver behind the 4% increase. And so the administration is recommending that the board do take action to extend this contract for 1 year. Our partnership with RJB is critical to our ability to take care of our buildings and to provide a safe and clean environment for students and staff.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? We're okay to move that forward?
Hey, Mary, this is Tamika. So just a question with regards to, I know that it's probably not an exact science, and the contract pretty much calls out like additional costs associated with COVID. Forget the exact verbiage, but do we have any insight into what the likely costs due to any COVID related add-ons would add to the overall contract?
The current contract is for 15 night custodians, and that is the level of support that RJB has been providing to the school district. We did seek from RJB a proposal for additional services should the district need to secure additional services, and that's embedded in the contract. It's $18.50 per hour for each additional hour of custodial services. That's
27 for the supervisor. Okay.
$27 per hour for a supervisor should we need to add a supervisor for additional level of service. So that is that flexibility that we felt was important to embed in this contract extension and provide that flexibility to the administration and to the board, because we are in this place where we have some uncertainty as to what our needs will be, but we want to be ready with a contract in place so that we'll meet our needs when that need arises.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, so we'll move that forward for the next meeting. The next is discussion on continuing with Ed Red. I'm pretty sure this was Christy Braden, correct? She has left the building.
She has left the, that's true. So, you know, maybe we should, I'd love her involvement in this conversation. We put it on only now because it's time to renew, and, you know, we're in the process of building the new budget. What I'm thinking, since Christy is not on this call and she has been kind of our guide with Ed Red, is perhaps since next month we're doing the tentative budget, we'll include it for that purpose. And then we can put this topic, you know, we can just have this topic on again next time and then you can talk about it. Sound okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay, let's do it that way.
All right, so we are up to topics for future agenda items.
Well, that's one.
One, Ed Red, okay.
One, Ed Red, hold on a second. I need to get back to my notes. So Ed Red, the tentative budget. It'll be a tentative budget with a resolution to schedule the public hearing and notify the public. I already mentioned calendar changes. Maybe we're going back to the resolution. Well, I guess we're going back to the resolution that we talked about regarding COVID-19, unless we have a reason to do it sooner. Did I miss anything that we just said we were going to come back to?
Chromebook leases?
Yep, the leases, thank you. That was not a thing when I first wrote these notes. Okay. Cabinet, does anybody have anything else that needs to be at the next meeting? Okay.
Then you talked about a decision tree earlier in the meeting. Is that something that we'd want to share with our community?
So this is what I expect will be happening. And again, it's so hard to know without having seen it, but it seems likely to me that it will be something that will be shared with schools and will therefore be appropriate for me to be shared and probably will end up in the FAQ.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's, you know, that's what I think it'll be, but I can't make a full-on commitment until I've seen it.
That's great. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, next will be up to some more public comments. I think you just got a couple that were addressed, Chris.
So we have 84 remaining public comments. Many of them are similar topics to that were already discussed or addressed during public comment. I can summarize. I'm going to go with the board's decision on this. I can read them all. I can summarize some of the frequently asked statements, questions, and read some of the newer ones that were not addressed previously. I'll take your direction.
I would say we kind of summarize kind of into some general topics of, you know, a lot of them are probably on one side or the other, which way we're going to go. So if we kind of just rehash or talk about those, and then anything that is a new topic.
Sure. So a lot of questions regarding, first off, a lot of thank yous. A lot of parents saying thank you. We appreciate the work that you're doing, the teams put in, and that the board's put in on this. A lot of questions regarding self-certification and concerns that parents may not be truthful in that. A lot of questions regarding 6 feet, the social distancing. You know, the possibility of possibly going up to 3 feet in distance. A lot of concerns regarding half-day kindergarten. Questions regarding specials, especially with kindergarten or at the upper levels with band. A new question, Dr. Christopher Murphy asking, when will the administrators share the data of the staff and parent satisfaction surveys related to their comfort levels? Trends in this data were referenced, but actual figures should be made available to the public. Questions regarding the cleaning process, regarding chemicals that will be used, and how often they'll be cleaned. The rooms will be cleaned, the building will be cleaned. Just going to go through, try and find some more questions from us regarding substitute teaching, and how will subs be addressed, and possibly, you know, wanting to, this one I have from a Stephanie Arn, I apologize, Stephanie Arno-Pullen. There's already existing sub shortage. Certainly COVID will reduce the number of available subs as potential subs won't work to risk their health. What is the district's plan for filling in for teachers who are sick, quarantined for extended period of time, pulling staff to cover absent teachers who will go out so far? Combining classes may not work for a variety of logistical reasons. Sorry, let me get back to my spreadsheet. A couple more regarding allergies in the classroom, regarding eating in the classrooms and students cleaning their desks. Questions regarding pre-K program and what will those look like? How will students do therapy? Whether it's physical, OT, PT, or PT is physical, PT, OT, SLP.
More questions regarding if a family leaves the state, how are we going to enforce quarantine, or will they have to quarantine for 14 days? A couple questions regarding asking here, Jerry Smith was one that I have right here. Please ask each person on this feed and have them answer this question. Are teachers essential workers? Thank you. And so that's kind of sums up some of the common themes throughout.
Okay. And I assume you're gonna, that spreadsheet you have is gonna get forwarded on to everybody.
Yes.
So we can try and get
Sue Walker already has it.
Okay.
So that will go then to the superintendent's office.
Perfect. Is there any chance you were able to share that spreadsheet with the rest of the board so we can read through it when we get a chance?
Yep, not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next, we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, LaCroix,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Wheaton.
Aye. Okay, we don't expect any action coming back from closed session, so, basically we'll be adjourning this part of the meeting. Lynn, I'll meet you in the library there to do the closed session with you.
Just make sure you're wearing your mask.
Yep. So everybody should have a link to the next closed session meeting. We'll see you shortly.